Evening, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 14th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth School Board. Happy New Year, everyone. We will begin with the roll call. Patty?
Tally Westerberg. Here. Liz Barrett. Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Pip Clues. Here. Brian French.
Here on Zoom.
Lee Hudson. Byron Maddow.
Here.
Carrie Nolte.
Thank you.
Oh, nope. Lisa Rappaport.
Oh, here.
Eric Moore.
Here.
Nathan Delaney.
Here.
Carrie's on her way in.
Okay.
She
I thought we
made a
just had her.
stop
Yeah.
at the
Okay.
ladies' room.
Okay.
Okay, shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, announcements, recognitions. Does anyone have anything? I guess we should let everyone know that our board member, Lee Hudson, is taking a leave of absence, so he won't be with us for a few months. I emailed him today, asking how he was doing, and I didn't hear back, but I'm sure I will. So we will miss him being with us. We will, Brian and I will meet about the committees that he's on, and there's one that's immediate that we'll need to find a replacement for, and that's the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, which Brian is planning to get together soon. So we'll talk about that probably at our next meeting. We wish him well, and if you have an opportunity, drop him a text if you can. Any other announcements that you have?
Yes, and so Helene Wemple, who's a language teacher at the high school, and is behind a lot of our, as we think about the strategic plan and a lot of our work around around kind of global awareness. Helene's a real key cog in what we're doing. And I think folks who have been on the board will remember that she was out for a year recently with a Fulbright scholarship, and she has been chosen to present her Fulbright research at the Global Education Benchmark Group. It's a national conference that will be held in Miami in the spring. So it's pretty prestigious for her to have that opportunity, and and again, it's a real tribute to how important, just how important this type of work is at the high school in general, and then within that work, how important Helene has been and continues to be. So congratulations to Helene.
Very good. Thank you very much, and congratulations. Okay, we will move on to the next item of the agenda, the consent agenda, and we have to approve minutes from the December 10th, 2024 regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second to approve the minutes?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I'd like to abstain.
Okay, we have one abstention. Okay, public comment. We are now going into the public comment section of our meeting. We have people that have signed up to speak. Every person has 3 minutes. Please give your name and address and come up to the podium. The first one is Kate Hayden.
Good evening, Kate Hayden, Monash Street. And I'm here to follow up on the status of the elementary school playground project. I'm hoping that Nancy, as chair, you'll add this item to the agenda tonight or in the coming weeks so that the public, your constituents who are invested in this project, will be able to hear regular updates about the status and plan moving forward for this project. Transparency of information is essential, it's critical. Ashley and I continue to offer support and assistance in moving it forward in any way we can, and we really hope that the board will do the same. I'm also hoping to hear more about the facilities committee that was brought up during the last meeting in December. Has this committee convened? Will you include a member of the public on it? Will you be monitoring and assisting with the playground project? Seems to me this would be a great committee to help manage a project like the playground renovation. Additionally, given that it's budget season, I hope you discuss and add a specific line item in the budget for the elementary school playgrounds. As we're all well aware, maintaining our school playgrounds has fallen through the cracks, and I just don't want it to happen again. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. The next one is Ashley Blackington.
Kate and I come in a pair now. I am Ashley Blackington, 65 Mendham Ave. So I'm just here to reiterate some of the points that she's made. One, and most importantly, is to publicize the project. We have been trying to spread the word and ask for feedback in our own part of the project initially, and now that it has moved on to a bigger, broader audience, to include all of the schools and to include all of the children in the elementary schools, we're hoping that it can have a more public-facing view for people to be able to interact with, because a lot of the feedback that we've heard so far about what may delay the project moving forward has to do with getting feedback and input from people, and if people don't know that the project is happening, they can't provide feedback. And so that's one of the things we're hoping for. And then also, as Kate said, regular status updates on where it's at. It is really difficult to get updates or to know where to look for them. It's a big project. It's $1.8 million. And so we're hoping that going forward, broader audience and more public input and public view of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. We have Kim James.
Kim James, 1600 Islington Street. Good evening. I would like to speak tonight in regards to the redistricting process and voting. First, thank you, Carrie and Byron, for taking the feedback from your community through this process. It's evident you're working towards finding a balance between the needs to shuffle neighborhoods to different schools and doing what's best for students and families in Portsmouth. Having a proposal that allows students to remain at their current elementary schools and their younger siblings to grandfather through the same school is proof that, as elected officials, you are listening to your constituents. From the time this process started in September, we have all learned a lot, and a lot has changed. It appears at this point the overall goals are to impact the least amount of students and families while having the greatest impact. The goal of the committee is to give a formal proposal and hold a vote this month. I ask today that the redistricting committee and school board extend this time frame. The last 6 months have allowed the redistricting committee and concerned citizens to collect data regarding the proposed neighborhoods and factor how moving or not moving these students will impact the elementary schools immediately and in the future. In the last month, 2 new neighborhoods have been added to this plan, of which the same data has not been collected, shared, and assessed for immediate and future impact. Citizens of these neighborhoods have not had the time to participate in this dialogue and weigh the impacts of redistricting. Has the committee collected data showing the amount of students who would remain at New Franklin, the amount of students who would be grandfathered in, and what year the grandfathering would end? I would expect this data to be collected and shared with the community before making a formal proposal and voting. In addition, the committee has yet to consider how the development of workforce housing at the former Lister Academy site will impact the population of New Franklin School. In regards to this development, has the council considered allowing the workforce housing at Lister and its abutting neighborhoods of Panaway and Oxford to be redistricted to Little Harbor? My data shows 2 or less families that would need to grandfather students in these 2 neighborhoods. This number is significantly less than the Powder House neighborhood, which has 13 children that would be grandfathered through New Franklin School. Focusing on development at Lister Academy in conjunction with allowing current Panaway and Oxford families to remain at New Franklin School and new families to redistrict to Little Harbor would eliminate the administration's fear of grandfathering taking too long. It would also ensure that the least amount of students and families are impacted while having the greatest impact with families new to the community beginning at Little Harbor. If the committee's goal is to move with the least amount of students and have the greatest impact, it seems like a win-win situation. Have you collected this data? I'm requesting that the data is presented and compared with the numbers for Powder House and Atlantic Heights. I also implore the school board to take what we've learned about the facility inequities at New Franklin School and begin the process of problem solving how to best remedy the less than satisfactory environment these children are spending 30 hours a week in. Overall, I'm grateful to have board members who are listening and working with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Chair, may I request the written testimony of the speaker?
Is it possible for the redistricting comments to provide the written testimony, particularly to our co-chairs?
Would you like us to email it?
Yes, please. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good suggestion. Next, we have Kristen Thornton. Did I say that correctly?
Hi, my name is Kristen Thornton, 99 Porpoise Way. I am nowhere nearly as prepared as the others, but I am here speaking on behalf of my children and my family in my neighborhood of Atlantic Heights. Just recently learned about the redistricting of our neighborhood being included in that process. So I feel like we've been discluded from a lot of the preparations that have gone in so far. And would probably not be at this meeting if it hadn't been for a friend. I still have yet to hear any communication from any of the board members to our school about including Atlantic Heights, which is part of my concern about the process that has been put forth. I know there's been a lot of effort, and I've heard about a lot of effort that's gone into it. And I probably would have paid closer attention had I known that my children would be impacted by it. And now that they are going to be impacted by it, I've tried to play catch up with it all. So it's a little hard to make a big decision like that when, you know, I don't have all the facts and everything, or the time that a lot of other families have had to make that decision. My other point being that I feel like communication could have been a little bit better, and I would love to be able to learn more about what's happening. So time would be really helpful with this whole process, just to consider maybe delaying the decision for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Next, we have Joni McNeil.
Hi, Joni McNeil, 67 Crescent Way, also known as Atlantic Heights. I know most of you are over this whole process and just want it to be done, but for us, it's only just begun. We just found out our neighborhood was going to be affected by the redistricting less than 2 weeks ago. And the only way we found out was through a friend of a friend of a friend, not through Parent Square, which is the literal reason that app exists, to communicate with families what is going on at their schools. So at the expense of my kids' sleep and work, I've been scrambling to play catch up on all the recorded meetings and notes. This is not enough time for us all to ask the questions we need to ask, talk to our neighbors, and make an educated decision about what works best for our families. We shouldn't have had to do all that on such short notice. We should have been included in the process the minute our neighborhood was brought into the conversation. The last we heard was on December 13th, when Atlantic Heights was mentioned as another possible contender for redistricting. There was no follow-up after that. That inaction alone is enough for me to question my faith in the process, and there's just no excuse for that. This information should have been shared with all families, never mind just the affected families. I've had so many questions arise while watching the previous meetings. For instance, could this be a phased approach, moving kids from Dondero to Little Harbor this coming year, then dealing with New Franklin the following year? We're talking about making changes that affect the next 5 to 10 years. Is waiting 1 year going to make a difference at New Franklin, where numbers are more consistent? How did New Franklin even get to the point of disrepair? Could the construction at New Franklin be completed first and then see how the numbers work with the new spaces? Could a separate survey have been sent to the affected families to see what their intentions are now or which ways they're leaning? Could the vote be pushed back to bring on a consultant? Byron and Carrie have been so generous with their time, but any questions or suggestions I've had, tried to bring to the conversation, have been met with, that's great, but it's too late in the process. And that's not my fault, but my family will be affected without a real chance of anything changing based on what we bring to the conversation. It's out of our control, and nobody even thought to tell us what was going on or how we could get involved. We had to go digging for that information, and that's just not fair. This is a big decision that changes the course of a lot of lives, and it should be treated like the big deal that it is. This meeting is our only chance to address the whole school board, whereas the original 3 neighborhoods have had months to follow along and voice their concerns. This is distressing as both a parent and a taxpayer. Anyway, our decision's not that easy, and I just ask for a little compassion when you vote. Just consider if you truly think the affected families have been well informed and adequately notified. We all deserve to have our voices and situations heard. And for us, this is just more. It's more than just about making the numbers work. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. Next, we have Lauren Cook.
Hello, Lauren Cook, 86 Coakley Road. I'm in the same boat, hearing about my neighborhood, Meadowbrook, which I never even knew was called Meadowbrook, 2 weeks ago. So my comments are partly about the communication issue, but more also about why Meadowbrook. So I want to point some things out about my neighborhood. We walk everywhere to New Franklin. I am 0.8 miles from the school. It's right behind the Port Inn. We walk, we hit the button, we cross Route 1, we wave to the seniors on our way on Cottage, we take a left, we're there. We're there almost every weekend, walking there, shooting baskets. We go to play dates in the North Mill Pond neighborhood. Those are all I consider my neighbors. When I tell people where I live, I say, oh, the road adjacent to North Mill Pond. I walk to North Mill Pond to go trick-or-treating, right? So when I look at the map, there's 6 neighborhoods being said that they're going to New Franklin. We are closer to New Franklin physically than 5 of those neighborhoods, with the exception of the one that it's actually in. So we are right there. Secondly, we're probably the smallest fish to fry. It was said in the January 2nd meeting, we have 6 kids. So we are one road. We are Coakley Road, and I've lived there for 12 years, and there has never been more than 4 households that have gone to New Franklin. So I think it was put in after the fact, like, oh, we need a couple more numbers, but it does not make sense to me why it was put in, because it wasn't really for equity reasons, and it certainly wasn't for location reasons. The neighborhood is full of 1950s ranchers. There's a lot of people that have lived in those houses the entire time, and I believe in that entire 70 years, those families have always gone to New Franklin. My last point has less to do with my Coakley Road neighborhood and more just with the whole process. Was what makes me nervous for all the families affected is there's been some nice thought to go through how are we going to transition families through and protect them. And so there's been talk about busing. There's been talking about grandfathering in younger kids. But we all know that the school board changes over, right? And so I voted for a lot of you, and I really have faith in you that you will, uphold the promises you're making. But my 3rd child will be starting kindergarten next year. So what's to say that when she is in 3rd grade and there's new members sitting on the school board, I read the note of a school board at any time could vote that those transitional neighborhoods need to go now. And so I don't want to live in fear after if I'm forced to make this decision, that then the wool's going to be pulled out, from under us. So I'd like to think about how is this going to, be consistent for families, whatever decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next, we have Julie Gannett. Gallant. The handwriting is hard to read, sorry.
So my public comment literally got deleted 5 minutes before I came here. So I know you all know me, Julie Gallant, 10 Pleasure Street. I've been pretty involved in this process. Just some things. I know you guys are going to be talking about the redistricting committee getting an update tonight. I was at the last meeting along with Nancy in the audience. And And just something that I do really want to make sure that everyone is aware of is Kate Callahan, the principal at Don Darrow, did speak at that meeting, and she is a member of the committee. Unfortunately, what she said at that meeting when I was in person was not heard to rehear, sadly. I was there. She spoke very softly, but what I did hear her say essentially was that she doesn't feel like this has been a committee. She doesn't feel like she has been an equal member of the committee. And I think, kind of my reflection on that was I've been there, I've listened, I've heard, and kind of I think essentially is that there's been people on the school board who have come to the redistricting committee. There's been a lot of work that they are doing outside of that committee, and the principals have spoken, and maybe they just don't feel like they were being heard. And I think that is something that she did say, is that she didn't feel like she was being heard, and she's really concerned about the process. And the process being that, for example, you have a meeting, the minutes get put out, and they're just at the next meeting. No one's actually saying, yes, that is what happened. And I think, personally, with that being said in the meeting, I think I would want to see that on the meeting minutes, maybe, and that there was a little bit of discussion about what are the concerns of the process, and maybe that could be added. And I don't know what happened afterwards or anything like that. The other thing that I do want to point out, which Zach said at the meeting, is that, and a lot of people were discussing, is that there are two conversations going on. Number one, we are talking about redistricting, but the thing we cannot forget is the state of New Franklin School. And I know that they've requested for there be something about moving forward on the agenda, the budget for the playgrounds, but I would also like there to be something else to be put on the agenda moving forward to address New Franklin. You're coming up in budget seating, you're having a lot of discussions about that, but I am not seeing anything yet. I have faith to discuss what's going to happen at New Franklin. I have reached out to city council members. I have spoke at city council meetings, and I would like maybe a discussion and a clearer picture on explaining to the public what it looks like to fix some of the things at New Franklin to bring them up to par with the other schools, because we still are talking about equity. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. And now we have Caroline Turk.
Hello, I'm Caroline Turk, 152 Hillside Drive. Again, I've spoken at quite a few meetings. Just a little bit to add on all the previous stuff that I've said. I just appreciate that the committee has taken into account as much as what we've said as they can, and I do really feel that the committee is taking on board trying to look at different family situations and different opinions that have been given. So that's a plus side of what you guys have been working at. And I think the biggest thing for me, and I started off right at the first meeting saying this, is that a family choice is so important, and to have that be able for people to look at their own family and make a choice for their family, because some people's families, it makes sense for them to move and that's what they want to do. Other people's families, they have other things coming into it and it makes sense for them to stay. So I really appreciate that the last time the committee met, that was something that was really a forefront in the suggestions moving forward. So I just want to say thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. However, you want to move to
Public comments.
Oh, do we have any public comment Zoom?
No hands up.
No. Okay. Do we want to move up the redistricting discussion, or let me say one thing before we do that. We have our high school principal and to talk about the DEI, the AP. Should we let them speak or should we do the redistricting first? What do people think?
The
High school.
Yeah,
I think the high school.
the high school first. Okay. Okay, can somebody make a motion to move up that item?
Motion to suspend the rules to move up the discussion from the high school on, I don't know exactly what.
On its 9D
90.
to where we are right now. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Got to do a roll call because we got
Oh,
Brian
okay.
on.
Discussion before we vote.
Oh, yeah, a discussion?
If people are amenable to this, I'd like to also suspend the rules to move up policy IKF, which pertains to high school curriculum, so that we might have the opportunity to hear a little bit from Principal Canosi about the memo he presented to the policy committee about that policy. That would be a separate motion, but after we vote, I'd like to put that forward.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All,
I think we should
We should vote on the first one first.
Okay,
I just
let's
wanted
vote on the
to make
first
sure
one
that I put that out there.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
So yes to move up 9D.
May I
Until we
make a
vote
motion
on.
to also suspend the rules to move up policy, I've lost it, IKF on the 20 credit high school graduation requirements to occur after the discussion from the principal about honors at the high school.
Second, okay. Roll call, please. Oh, discussion? Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Patty?
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay, so if we're doing these all together, I'd like to make a motion to move up 10A, or no, 10B,
A and B.
A and B, which are the committee updates regarding redistricting committee, school board tour, and redistricting committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion? Patty?
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with Steve. Would you like to come up with Chez Laurent? Hi,
Hello, everyone.
thank you for coming.
Yeah, we're excited. So, Steve Kinosi, principal of Portsmouth High School. With me is Shay St. Laurent, the director of curriculum and instruction. Quick, am I sharing my screen? Is that the goal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That. So, yeah, let me go to Zoom. Share screen. Oh, host has disabled attendee screen.
Oh, let's try this again. Good heavens.
Let's see where I am.
Okay, try now.
All right, there we go. Yeah, you're gonna see. There you go. Great. We're getting there. Slow and steady.
Yep.
All right. So I am excited to kind of present this update. 2 years ago, I stood before the board explaining some of the things that we learned as we onboarded as a new principal and director team of some of the decisions that Portsmouth High School has made to move towards adding more dual enrollment. And as 2 years have passed, we have essentially moved to a really robust catalog filled with dual enrollment opportunities that include our CTE programs, actually every department in the high school offering that level of advanced work. So we're very excited. And before I begin, I just want to frame, you're going to hear three big words that we're going to use a lot tonight. One of them is more, the other one is equity, and the other one is access. So you're going to hear us say those three words a lot. But I want to start the whole thing is because what we needed really to kind of frame this presentation and to frame our work over 2 years was the portrait of the graduate. So I want to name that, and it's up on the deck as you can see. Those icons were created to represent all the 6 elements. And for the last year, well, the 6 months, we've been working on these icons specifically with our faculty and really leaning into that work around the portrait, around their work as guiding students every day in their classrooms. So these icons represent those 6 things, starting from the top on the right, the passion for learning, transferable knowledge, our communication and collaboration, empathy and kindness, personal well-being, and our global and local citizenship. These are important. And so if you've seen my weekly announcements from PHS, I often tag these icons on slides to celebrate our students and our faculty work as it's aligned to the portrait. So I just wanted to frame that because everything we do at this point is really thinking deeply about how this is connected. So at the beginning of the year, this year we offered, we have a slide where we can kind of direct you to how many courses. It's actually a huge amount of courses, gigantic list of classes that we offer through the dual enrollment and honors program. But I was interested in a lot of our teachers who have been veteran master teachers who've taught AP, who've taught honors for years. And I was really curious about their take. Just as a quick anecdotal, hey, what do you think? And one of those teachers, a master veteran teacher who had moved from AP to dual enrollment, said this: "What I appreciate about this is we spend more time on mathematics and less time prepping for a test." And for me, that's a critical insight from our faculty. More time on mathematics, more time in language, more time in English, more time in, and that's a refrain we hear across the board. We're learning a lot as we go. But this quote from, again, a master teacher was about really setting a tone of what we were trying to do and how we're supporting our teachers. So we did a little anecdotal, quick deep dive on some evidence. And we used the year 2018 and 19 because it's pre-COVID, because touching data sets during COVID would just be a real recipe. So we looked at this, and this is about the average that we found leading up to 2018. About 150 students that had access or enrolled in our AP classes. And then we juxtaposed that to last year. And you see that we have 464 students enrolled in our dual enrollment programs. A remarkable connection for our kids. It is about equity and access. It is about more. A 213% increase in students. Now, what I want to do is pause here for a little bit because I want you to look at the icons of the portrait of the graduate. And the one that's just above the logo for the high school is the personal well-being, the element of the portrait of the graduate. And I need to emphasize this one significantly. 464 kids who are earning college credit, who are developing the confidence to push their own role as a student, as a thinker, absolutely amazing and worth a celebration of both our faculty's efforts, our students' choices, our families that have made this choice. And it's resounding that our families continue to lean in that direction. So I wanted to highlight that because what comes out of this is what's next. This is an early stage of this work, of really thinking about where our students are and what we're providing for them. And it also echoes, and this is where Shay's going to come in and kind of take over, this also echoes our commitment to our faculty and their growth as well. Before that, really quick, one element of the students' ability to take these classes, this increase in number, has to do with the structure of the day as well. So DE classes, our college courses that are actually offered in semester chunks, like a normal college class. This just fundamentally allows more kids to take more opportunities in rigorous coursework. So that's just one structural element that adds to that increase, as well as student choices. So now on to our teachers.
Hey, everyone. So in 2023-2024, we definitely increased the number of dual enrollment classes, as Steve mentioned. We also doubled the number of teachers teaching advanced coursework. And that just opened up some new opportunities for us to understand the most advanced coursework that we're offering at the high school. And the way that we did that was we took that cohort of teachers and we brought them together so that we could learn as much from them as possible about what this experience offers our students. So we've had regular monthly meetings, frequent one-on-one check-ins with those teachers, and we asked for student and teacher feedback along the way so that we could continue to support them and understand their role in building more opportunity for advanced coursework at our school. And it helped us learn about how this is impacting our professional culture and our students. One thing that it did really help us build were professional partnerships. Our teachers are now connecting with their college colleagues with mutually beneficial results, which include co-designing lessons and partnering to look at that curriculum together, observing each other, both in the college setting and having the professors come into our schools and observe the teachers, working with our students and learning about those programs and how we can continuously improve them, and providing both our students and our staff members with access to college resources. There's two classes that I just kind of wanted to emphasize and talk a little bit about. One is our biotech class that you're going to see presented in our program of studies for the 25-26 school year. This is really, really exciting. The teacher that's going to be teaching this class had previously taught AP classes and came into the dual enrollment cohort last year, and now is in her second year teaching dual enrollment biology, and next year she's going to be offering a biotech course. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's a biotechnology and fabrication course where the students actually investigate the theory, tools, and applications of biofabrication. And some of the topics included in that course are DNA isolation and manipulation and molecular cloning, which is really exciting. And she got some really amazing tools donated to our school. So that's an exciting new development we just wanted to highlight. The second piece is Physics 1, 2, and 3. We actually had a teacher who used to teach AP investigate dual enrollment for these three classes, but he actually found that neither of those were a good fit, so he went ahead and designed a whole new course sequence for these three classes, and we tapped into his expertise and leadership to build that experience for our students right within the walls of Portsmouth High School. Our main goal is to follow the lead of our experts in the building and just keep pushing professional capacity and leadership, and we believe that that's what we're doing through this process. The next piece that I want to highlight is all of the information about our honors courses at PHS are highlighted on our Program of Studies website, which is linked up on our Portsmouth High School website. And I'm just going to kind of click on that to show you what that looks like. So we have a whole page of information that we worked on a couple of years ago and continue to update that has information about honors and dual enrollment courses at our high school and what that means. So the community can go on and learn what that looks like. There's a side-by-side comparison of honors, dual enrollment, and AP offerings and what that means as students apply to colleges. We have a frequently asked questions page, and we also have a list of all of the offerings that we offer at the high school as far as our honors and dual enrollment classes. And then we have an example of how UNH actually manages transfer credit and advanced standing from a local university, so that if people would like to reference that, there's a lot of information there. So we just wanted to point you towards that so you could have more information. Our next steps in the process of really making sure that we feel we have the most rigorous experiences that are equitable and accessible to our students is to continue to collect teacher and student feedback on those courses, on our honors courses and dual enrollment courses at the high school. And we're going to do this by utilizing some tools that the colleges offer and also by building our own tools and feedback loops at the high school. We also want to explore more opportunity at the high school. We're looking at an international baccalaureate program. We're looking at PHS Scholar courses, again, similar to that physics course that I described, where we're creating our own rigorous courses from within. We have a program called the Global Connect program, which is a 4-year program that's being cultivated by a couple of teacher leaders, one of them, Helene Wemple, that Zach referenced earlier, that allows students to navigate a global pathway for 4 years through the courses we offer and other experiences outside of the coursework and within our community. And we're also have a capstone advanced research class that we're really excited about that many, many more students are continuing to take at the high school. Your turn.
Yeah. So this is just a quick snapshot of a lot of work that's happening across the building. We continue to learn, but ultimately, like I said when I started, and like I said 2 years ago, this is about creating more opportunities for more students. We are not in the business of limiting opportunities, and we are on a good path. And we see it both in the work that we gathered from our faculty. And I just want to make that connection. Our strategic plan talks about building teacher capacity. The work we've just demonstrated tonight is evidence of that work. Started 2 years ago, and we continue to lean into it in a really successful way. Our teachers are experts. They are providing our students with unbelievable opportunities, and this is the way we know how best to kind of support them. So more means more. More actually means all. And so one of the things, just to wrap this up really, and then I know there'll be some Q&A, but we mentioned equity and access. And when I think about the portrait of the graduate, there's some things that come out of our work as we've looked at this dual enrollment move, that ultimately our commitment to equity and access for all students is emphasizing a continuous improvement, developing a culture of continuous improvement, empowering PHS to strive for excellence in our academic and our professional growth, fostering a culture of reflection, collaboration, and innovation, inspiring our learners to achieve their full potential and contribute meaningfully to their communities. That sounds like our Portsmouth portrait of a graduate, and I'm really excited about the work that our teachers are leading and our leadership is supporting. So that's it for us. We can lean
Thank
into
you.
some Q&A if there
Yes.
is any.
Thank you both very much. Questions? Kerry?
I have a couple questions. Am I understanding that there are no AP classes currently?
Currently, yes. Yep.
And one of the concerns that came up when this was first, when you walked in the door, and I think you got this, was concern about college admissions and things like that. And just curious if you have experience that it has or has not influenced that.
Right now, really 1 year without AP, and we're in the current year. It's our first year without an AP class. But in those 2.5 years that we've been around, there have been no measurable differences in acceptance rates, or we still have students taking AP courses, by the way, just to name that. So courses that we still have faculty and staff support to make sure they have access and registration and all of that. So that still goes on, and there is absolutely no measurable difference in the scores that the kids that we get back from the College Board. So we haven't seen anything that we can measure as a negative impact.
And more of just a comment, but I think from a college professor, because I have a job other than the school board, I sometimes forget about, but it's not having any is almost better. Like when it became so few, I know that it's easier for us to interpret admissions letters from the high schools when they're like, we don't offer this.
Yes.
And so I think part of the concern was that we were in this like weird in between where there were so few offerings that they might get penalized for not having an AP.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think to frame it in the context of admissions and how colleges and high schools work together, it's actually the school profile. So that document is actually a critical piece of information. So that's where the school, any school, all schools, kind of outline their program of study and all their data sets, informing colleges and admissions reps where we are and where we stand. And then that's where they make their decision, actually based, not decision to enroll or not enroll, but their information of a school comes from that profile. So I think there is some benefit to a school that just says, this is we believe this is our most rigorous course or courses, and the colleges then move on from there in terms of their decisions. Yeah.
Just finally, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is just that on the UNH side, we're getting lots and lots of state pressure on articulation agreements with community colleges and formalizing lots of 2+2 options. So I would foresee that very easily there would be a 3-year UNH completion in the near future too. So I think it's well timed for all of those changes, which are important too.
Yeah, we've been in those meetings as well with the state folks, and it's been amazing to know that some of this is great, absolute, clear, free sailing for families and kids through our university system as well.
I'm done now.
You're done? Okay. Dally, our rep from SAU 50.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, both of you. As the one of the SAU 50 representatives on the area committee. Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Canosi have heard my feelings many times about this content. And so my question actually is a couple questions. When you answered her question about, admissibility, you answered with AP score answer. There's been no measurable difference in our AP scores.
Yeah.
You didn't answer, has there been any measurable difference in admissibility of our Portsmouth High School students? Granted, I know it's still early in the process, but I do think it's going to be really important for Portsmouth to continue to follow data around admissibility, around retention and preparation, and if there's any difference. And I also think the other part of the discussion that almost never gets addressed is merit-based aid. And my experience is that students who take AP courses are seen by colleges as, more likely to receive merit-based aid. And so I think that, while certainly I am someone who is fully in favor of equity and fully in favor of as many students accessing, I do think that part of this is still data that needs to be collected on a long-term basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Oh, Lisa.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just think the program of studies that you developed since you got here has been a fantastic improvement for kids and for families. I mean, I think about how much harder it was 3 years ago to even know what classes were available at the high school. So I think that has been fantastic. One piece that I'm curious about is, as you're rolling all of these things out, which are clearly fantastic opportunities for kids, are you doing anything new in the future to maybe communicate it more? Because I do think some of these newer things you're talking about, people are not quite as aware of. And there's, like, for example, a lot of kids who do take AP exams where teachers support them. The fabulous Helene Wemple has my child in class next semester and told my child, if you want to take the AP, register for it. I will be running classes after school where I will work with my Spanish 6 kids to prepare for this exam. But I don't know that the whole school community knows that if they're making a decision about whether to continue studying Spanish when they're freshmen and sophomores. And maybe they do, and I just didn't know. But
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
curious
I think that's a
about
great point. Actually,
that kind of idea.
Yeah, I heard from the science department in that same realm, like how to communicate that to students, that the exam, when it is, the dates, registering, and what things they could work on, like highlighting it if there are differences between the exam or the test and the course as it's taught. So yeah, that's always something we would lean in on, and making sure our kiddos knew. I don't think we've had a significant decrease in number of test takers either. So that's curious. That's to that point of things that we continue to watch, because like we said earlier, this is really kind of relatively new, and it takes those cycles.
Yeah. And I did want to follow up on Tally's question too, because it's such a mixed bag when you talk to colleges about what they're looking for. I feel like it's a black hole and it's different at every school. But I have been getting, at least in the very unscientific sample of places my kid is looking at, the message that we prioritize AP or dual enrollment over honors when we're considering kids for admission and for aid. So I'm curious if that's just the 3 people I talked to, or if you're seeing that, or...
So 2 years ago, I presented when I came here first, and it presented a quick survey we did with 80 admissions reps that are partners with us and come to our college fairs. And it really depends on the school's profile. What the school says is their most rigorous course of study is how they make their decisions. Again, what we never wanted to do was get into an anti-AP. We're not anti-AP. We're not pro-DE. We're providing more opportunities for more students. So this idea of looking at that and listening to our faculty as they process both experiences as well, we're learning constantly. So what the college has told us in that 80 respondents who responded to that survey were that actually the differentiators are internships, capstone research projects. These are things, because think about it this way, and Shay and I both have been in classrooms for a very long time, and there's, let's say, as a rough anecdotal story, there's 10,000 applicants for 2,000 seats in your average sized university. 9,000 of those applicants all have 7 APs with 5s on them. couple varsity letters, a whole bunch of service hours. What are those differentiators? So what are we thinking about when we think about our CTE programs, our internships, our capstone research, our scholastic arts program? Like, these are things that are true differentiators in the eyes of colleges, when so often some of these other things are pretty static as data points. So it's just interesting for us to continue to look as well.
Steve, I just want to make sure something was clear. You were talking about a second ago about the school's profile. You were talking about the interaction between colleges and high schools, and you said it really depends on the school's profile. I just want to make sure you've already defined this before, but I think it's a close confuser for people at home. They might say, oh, you mean the college's profile, like, oh, if it's a bigger institution, if it's a whatever, and that's not what you were saying. I just want to make sure people are clear. What you're saying is you're going back to that official document which high schools produce, the high school school profile, which is sent to admissions offices saying, we are defining what is the most rigorous coursework at our high school for you. And I think that you've said before, and you're saying it again, that was consistent amongst admission reps.
Yes.
They were saying, we really have to rely on you, because you can label stuff however you want to label it. So we really rely upon you telling us what is the most rigorous work, so then we can evaluate to what extent students are choosing to engage that most rigorous work as we make our evaluations about admissions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. It's also on the front page of our website, so you can look at our profile. It's public for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Pip?
Thanks. The numbers are impressive in terms of the enrollment in APs versus the dual enrollment. I'm wondering, do we have any information on what percentage of that is enrollment in like CTE specific courses?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I don't have that to present to you tonight, but yeah, we do have
Do you
who's
know
where.
if it's mostly CTE or if we're seeing it across the board?
Oh, yeah, no, across the board. Yeah. The CTE, which has been amazing, is that the completer programs are almost all at that space of dual enrollment in year 2, because they've done the 2-year commitment to the program. So that's kind of an automatic. But we actually have, just by percentages of numbers of courses, so a big part of that 213% increase, or the 470 something, are actually in all the other departments.
Okay.
Just
And
by
I
sheer
can
volume.
piggyback off of that as well. At the high school, as you proceed through sophomore, junior, senior year, I know very well, as you get higher into classes, no matter what subject it is, you end up finding yourself into a dual enrollment class for most cases. And that includes almost all subjects. And there are a lot of CTE, but in no way is that the entirety of the 400 something students. I would say it's very equal amongst almost everything.
Okay, good. I know, I mean, we've done so well with CTE for so long
Oh, yeah.
that it's sort of advertised, whereas I didn't know how well these other ones were being advertised. So it's good to hear that you get steered into this pretty well. Okay.
And part of the decision to kind of really include our department heads and our departments in a new way for that leadership was to think about scope and sequence, because every department has to map that out. What is the math program at Portsmouth High School? What is the English program? What is the art program? These are critical steps that are led by our faculty and should be. And as Nathan said, many of them are ending up in this kind of rigorous college level, which we're kind of excited about as an opportunity. But Shay,
Yeah, I was just going to add that last year when I referenced that group of cohort teachers, there was 15 or 20 teachers. I can't remember exactly how many off the top of my head. None of them were CTE teachers, so CTE had already kind of established that dual enrollment program, and we onboarded that in our academic program as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, are we all set? All right, don't sit down. We're going to turn the meeting over to Pip, and she's going to talk about a policy, the new
Yes.
policy at the graduation requirement.
Okay. Yes, so a new law was passed by the state requiring schools to include a 20 credit option for diplomas. And the policy committee discussed this, and based on the fact that it was that it addressed this law, we felt that we would recommend this policy or this change to our credit policy. And I'm looking for that. This is policy IKF. So Principal Knosy was kind enough to send us a memo explaining kind of the impact that this might have on our, on what we do already. And he noted that we do offer this option to students who have IEPs already. So it wouldn't be a significant shift from what we offer already, or that some kids, the path that some kids follow. But this change would allow all students that option if they were to have any reason that they would need to have sort of an accelerated program, whether they're going into a different, they're not headed to college but following a different career path, or they have some other reason that they need to have an abbreviated a number of credits. So so I guess I would ask for a, we've moved the policy approval up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I would ask for a motion to approve this policy, and then we can open it to discussion and maybe ask some questions.
Motion to approve the first readings is 2 readings, right?
Yes.
For policy IKF.
Second.
Thanks. Okay, is there discussion or questions? Yes, Carrie.
Can you just clarify what a credit is and what credits were taken out of the 26? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes sense, yes. I think it's generally, I will say, and then maybe Principal Knosy can say more, generally, it's more of like a core focused diploma, so there would be fewer electives, essentially.
Yeah,
Say
so
more about that.
can I chime in?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the memo I submitted to the board was kind of an implication memo, right? To say, these are the things we're really concerned about. And that came from a little bit of research and as the law and principals. So I meet with the principals across the state. We have a informal group that meets every month. And this obviously was a big topic on that agenda. What I did with that memo that I presented to the board was turn it over to my team, my counseling team, my leadership team, academic standards. And so the idea is taking a policy, knowing that it's law and driven by law, we now have to develop some real clear implementation and procedural work. That's going to take some time. The fact that it's existed in that special ed category by law in the past was just a way to kind of frame it for us as we named some of those implications with some of the constraints. Right now, the confusion in the law for us is because New Hampshire is a competency-based state, they offer you 2 paths, essentially. If you're a standards-based, these are the things you think of. If you're competency, these are the things. They really say the same thing. It's the same content, but what we need to do is figure out how we're going to make that become, what's its impact on our kids. It doesn't automatically, and after 2 or 3 sessions we had already, it's not going to meet early graduation, right? So this idea of the Portsmouth diploma being 26 and staying at 26 is something we've agreed upon. Our community has said this is a valuable student experience for high school kids, right? So that's something that's not going away. There's no threat to that. What the 20 credit diploma and this minimum standards law that has been in the works for years here in New Hampshire, I think what we've decided as our team has debated it and discussed it and now moved to implementation and procedures is to say, what can this provide a family and a student that is making different choices? So it's a great opportunity. It's another opportunity to be successful, to be able to be proud of a Portsmouth diploma that has the same sort of depth and exposure and great faculty and great experiences. That's just cut short a little bit with those handful of credits. Some of those are elective. Some of the impact, unfortunately, could be for families, as I pointed out in the memo, will be families around CTE, right? That's a big commitment for students to take that 2-year completer. We're going to do everything in our power to really kind of get ahead of that in the procedural and the communication. Tracking is a big one. I named that in the memo as well because this is also a thing. Oh, we cannot allow, if more equity, access, our program, our portrait of a graduate are the things, the values we lean in on, this cannot be a 20 credits will be better. Nope. But it's a tool. It's an additional resource for us to support families who need to make different decisions. So we're excited for that option. We're still a ways. We're going to use the policy if it's approved and such. We use that then to develop the mandate for our procedural work and all of the guidance, both for families, students, our faculty. You know, what does that mean for my program? What does it mean for this? And these have been great conversations. Shay's led a bunch. I don't know if you want to chime in on our meetings on that stuff, right? Yeah. So, it's been a great, daunting, like, what's this going to do for us to, okay, we know this. We know how to handle supporting kids and families with different pathways. So that's what we're hopeful, and we're pretty excited about getting to the work. So as soon as you make that policy, we're in.
Nathan.
I just have a quick question. So if it's 20 credits instead of 26,
yeah,
how does that work with students getting periods off if they've already, I mean, that's 6 credits less if they've taken all their required courses in 2 weeks?
Well, here's where it gets really complicated.
I'm just trying to clear it up.
And we're right there with you. Like, how do we get our heads around this? So this is where, and we actually sent our coordinator of teaching and learning, Jackie Chisholm, to another curriculum meeting that was a statewide thing or a regional one. And so this is where it gets a little tricky. This law and regulations that surround it do not change our program of study. Mm-hmm. So GPS being a credit, right? Like our schedule, our course, like we still have integrity in our program of study. The local school districts have that. We control that. Mm-hmm. So that's why when we were debating it, like, well, do I do less? Well, no, currently those required courses are still mapped out in a certain way. So you're still in that block of time. And this is where it gets like, so you don't like to cut a class short because the state said you have 20 now. Does that make, this is a really nuanced detail on credit hours and courses, and it gets a little, we're still debating, but the impact on senior privilege, the impact on we're going to look at all of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Oh, go ahead.
Lisa. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just had 2 quick questions, and I think one was sort of along the lines of what Nathan asked, but I'm curious about if we're implementing this are we implementing this for the graduating class that's graduating?
26.
26.
That's the law.
So we could have students who are juniors right now who might be doing this next year.
So
I guess I'm curious, like, how are we?
So our counseling team has been part of the conversations from the get-go. So in their course advising that happens relatively soon, this is a factor because those juniors might make some decisions that will impact their, again, it's not an automatic early graduation. It still may take the same amount of time.
Right.
Because some kids need, and to Nathan's point, you know, when students have a support center block, a study center block, it just spreads it. So we don't anticipate it being such a radical shift for any of our students, a new opportunity for families to make new choices.
Okay, so you might have actually answered my second question, but in your memo, you made a reference to the possibility that we might have to limit elective offerings if too many kids do
That's
this?
That's just by virtue of the minimum standards. So we won't limit them because we still offer a 26 credit diploma. When you make that choice, and this is where, again, these little nuances. So we're not necessarily in that space of saying we're going to offer less. Students' choice or families' choices might, by virtue of the law as it breaks down requirements, 6 electives over 4 years is less than the electives they get offered in the 26 credit option. But that would just be family choices.
Thank you, that makes
sense. That helps.
Thank you. I would just encourage you to speak with local area high schools who have implemented other diploma and graduation requirement programs very successfully, and I think this is a situation that actually offers a whole bunch of freedom for students who have struggled or trying to have extra time to gain credit recovery. who, like you said, make different choices. I think that it really, in other local area high schools, has been very successful.
Yeah, one of the great things that came out of the initial discussion with the statewide principals group was we all documented the number of diplomas we offer. So it was really great to see the entire state list of, well, we've been offering 4 different diplomas and we offer 3 and this is a 22 credit and this is a, yeah, it's kind of neat because I think there's been really successful schools offering great choice and freedoms for families for a long time, and the law is just something we'll get behind.
And I think just to clarify specifically, one of the things he said, right, it doesn't mean that a student only can get a 20 or a 26,
Yes.
right? They might get through their senior year with 22, and maybe that's okay, right?
Yes.
So they take the extra art, but they drop a year of math because that's better for their family, right? Or take one less social studies class and stay in a music class for longer.
Yes.
It offers them the freedom to stay for the 4 years without the same, what might feel very, very difficult to attain if they have had some time of struggle in their high school.
Yeah, well said, thank you. That's it, exactly. So.
Yes, Carrie. I maybe am just having a hard time understanding, but is this specific to, so if people take other outside courses or VLACs or things that aren't explicitly, is that included in this, or is this more like the Portsmouth, these need to be taken at Portsmouth High?
So any course that we currently accept on the transcript towards graduation remains. That won't change. Yep. So if we have already, if we accept credits like VLACs, that doesn't change that at all.
And would there be a designation on a diploma?
The law is really interesting, and it's actually the regulatory part of the law there, where it gives us some guidance. It cannot say, this is in the regulatory line, state diploma.
Okay.
So we have the task and the challenge to find some language that celebrates the work of our students, no matter which path they choose. And we're going to do that with equity and access in mind. We do not have an answer at this time because it's really nuanced.
Yeah.
A traditional diploma, and that's where the conversation kind of ends because we're like, what?
I would be super curious to hear from the admissions connections around higher ed and what their view or experience has been with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Us too. Yeah. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great adventure. We're going to learn a lot and focus on our families and I think to the point that this gives our kids and families some great choices and still gives the local districts the integrity of their program. That's the real point. We get to determine our fate.
Yeah, I would say anecdotally, there's been very little impact on the 2+2 students.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
Tish, do you?
Tish pointed out.
So I pointed out, I
something.
did a little math, a little basic math, and the basic, the English 4 credits, science 3 credits, actually totals up to 22 and not 20. So I think what happened is maybe under the open electives, maybe it was supposed to be 10 minus 6 to be 4 credits. But anyways, that math doesn't add up. That's 22.
So you're
So we have to, the
Typo
policy,
on
so
that.
this is our first reading.
Yeah.
And I think the policy committee can do its math again and figure out where that error happened, because I was looking at the sample policy and it does say 6 open elective credits.
So then something up here, because
so we'll have to
nothing pointed
compare.
out as red under the credits that made it stick out that those credits were changed.
Right.
So that's why I
seems
just
to be the only
assumed-
one that was
yeah.
changed. So,
there are 2 charts issued by the state. It is confusing. So
okay. Yeah, so
the typo
I'll
would have
make a
been
note of
easy to
that
tweak.
and we'll, we can approve it tonight.
With that.
With that in mind, that we will make sure.
That's
that-
the
that-
bookkeeper
that-
to me, just so you
I
know.
appreciate that. I'm glad you noticed. So, okay, are there other questions or comments or?
Well, I just out of curiosity, Do you think that with this new 20 credit, that there'll be a higher rate of people wanting to graduate early?
No, our team, after 2 big debrief and brainstorming sessions, we think it's, I think to the point that's already been made, the families where that choice actually creates some opportunity. It's now just offered to a few more families. We don't see it as at all making any real big impact. We already offer early grad. We sign off on that, for seniors in that first semester. So, and that's, it's a kind of a steady, very low single-digit number. We have no reason to think this
That will
changes.
change at all because of that?
Yeah, not at this point. We also have, I want to end on the idea that, again, the procedural work we've already started is, this won't be wrapped up in the next month or something. Want to make sure that's clear for everyone. We're doing our due diligence because we do want to understand all the aspects, blind spots.
I think the one thing that I would say is, you mentioned that this would, that the law requires it to come into, or to be available in 2026. But if we pass this policy now, it's on our books immediately. I mean, not tonight because we have 2 readings, but as soon as we pass it. So I think we may want to add something into the policy that just says beginning in the graduation year of 2026.
I think that's smart, and it
sort of
gives
be on the safe side, so people aren't
gives
requesting it right now.
Yeah, it gives the team the time to develop those procedures.
The legal established timeline that we'll use all of it to make sure we're doing it right.
Okay, so given those 2 adjustments that we might make between now and the next reading, can we take a vote?
Okay, Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen Shea. Thank you guys very
so
much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good work.
We will move on now. We have adjusted our agenda. We'll move on to 10B, Redistricting Committee, and I would like to turn the meeting over to Kerry and Byron.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. So, I think there's sort of 2 things I think that we as a board wanted to talk about in this section. One was to debrief a bit on the most current iteration of the plan, the one that was discussed in the most recent committee meeting on the 2nd, that followed the community forum on the 15th of December. But I also understand that we want to have a discussion around some of the process that's been part of redistricting thus far. So it's my recommendation, I think at this point, that we separate those into 2 different distinct discussions so that we can focus when we get to the plan part on the plan, any questions we have on that and concerns, and we can talk about sort of like the meat that's in there. I don't know if I have a opinion on which goes first, but yeah.
I think the plan, one thing, and I'm understanding someone's question better now, is that I think we need to link to the redistricting plan on the site from the past meeting and add those to these minutes. 'Cause I think, does that make sense?
Yes.
And so I would say probably start with the plan and have that discussion.
Okay.
And were you going to share, or do you want
I
me
can
to
share.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start with just kind of the earlier context, and then maybe Byron, you can jump into the plan more. But since our last board meeting, there was a community forum hosted at Little Harbor, and that is required. That is recorded. I know that some of the audio was challenging from that, but overall we had good attendance and input. Prior to that meeting, when we were getting more and more feedback that prior to the community forum, we were getting more and more feedback that the plan as previously presented, only affecting Powder House neighborhood that currently goes to New Franklin, was not going to address the issues at New Franklin. And then between the tours of the schools and looking at number forecasts for each of the schools, it became very clear that there's a more dire and immediate concern for New Franklin School and overcrowding in the next year potentially. I think based on the data, I'm most worried about next year and K enrollment and loss of space that's currently already overutilized. And so as we sort of process that and coming to the community forum and we're planning for that forum, we felt like we needed to include other neighborhoods in that conversation. That was when the Parent Square message went out to all the families was it just elementary or was it?
District-wide.
What? A district-wide message went out. It was on a Thursday before the holidays with the forum on a Sunday.
Friday. It was a Friday.
It went out on a Friday. And it was, and we had talked about it, and I just felt like if we were even going to bring it up, we had to put something out. We did not have families from Atlantic Heights or Meadowbrook come to that forum, and we did note that, and we discussed that then at our January 2nd meeting. It has also come to my attention that earlier in this process, we were messaging out all of the redistricting meetings, and that the second didn't get sent out specifically to the families there, if that makes sense. But
So there was not a Parent Square notification about the second meeting?
About the redistricting meeting on the 2nd.
On January 2nd.
Now I'm getting into the process.
Yeah.
So let me get away from that. But essentially the changes were in trying to be responsive to the feedback. It was very important to folks that we allow grandfathering in that family identity within the school, within the elementary was really important. So at the forum, we discussed really a transitional neighborhood sort of plan, which was also kind of like in other places like a choice zone or something to that effect, where you allow school choice, have busing to both schools from that neighborhood for only certain specific neighborhoods, and you monitor the situation going on. But with the caveat that we saw these neighborhoods all being transitioned in 5 to 10 years to Little Harbor as their district. And so overall there was some support, but there was definitely some concern about either like kicking the can on the problem more with that, and or, just not making a solid decision and having more unknown. I think that concern was heard loud and clear at our redistricting meeting on the 2nd, related to administration and just being able to plan for the following year. Also just concerns about like either sudden moves or like that every year it would be like another guessing game of who's going to move or what's going to happen. And sort of the recommendation for like more clear guidance on what the transition options are, when they were, and trying to find a solution that was responsive to feedback but gave greater clarity than the transition plan.
Yeah. I think so where to pick up on a plan update, I think, is kind of what I'm thinking about is helpful in this context. So relative to the last time the board was understanding of like the plan, there was 3 neighborhoods involved. There was Lafayette Park, Hillside, and Powder House. And the feedback around the tours and then the feedback around the space issue not getting solved at New Franklin is what the catalyst was to bring in more neighborhoods. Carrie and I did analysis of the neighborhoods and the numbers that are present in those neighborhoods, and we came up with the suggestion of adding Atlantic Heights and Meadowbrook to get to the numbers that we think allow the district share to be equitable across the schools. District share, I think, is an important concept in this. Not every school has the same number of natural sections that are in the school building. New Franklin has 16, Dondero has 19, Little Harbor has 25. The number of students at those schools, obviously, to some degree, we want them to be relative to that district share. So if a school has 30% of the available sections in the district, then maybe 30% of the students is a reasonable number of students. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some variance there. However, the trends over the last 10 years have created a situation wherein New Franklin and Dondero have unequal weight on them relative to the number of kids in the district, and Little Harbor has less weight on it, right? So that calculus, that change over time, I think presents an opportunity relative to a longer transition in terms of making, it's a transition neighborhood plan. It's a 5-year plan. I think that's important to call out because in all of this, there is a great amount of weighing in terms of what is going to produce the greatest benefit to the students, how much disruption will there be with the families. Any change is going to cause disruption in the families. But at the same time, if you wait until a point in which the district share is so uneven, the equity issues become more acute, and you're not satisfying the mission of the school district, which is to provide, in our Portrait of Our Graduate, in our strategic plan, the belonging, the equity to our students. And we're failing that mission if we don't act with some level of urgency there. And so I think that is I just wanted to present a bit my reasoning on. Now, back to the plan. So we came to the 5 neighborhoods, and go ahead.
Can I just say one thing on that point? And I think we talked about this in the January 2nd meeting, is that with trends, the concern is that if we don't make a decision soon, eventually the decision will be made for us.
Correct.
And that will not, so right now we have the ability to say we're going to grandfather people in, we're going to do some type of transition, we're going to contemplate lots of different things that give families choice. That if trends were to continue in particular ways, we could be in a situation where we hit a year where there is no choice.
There's no choice.
We're all moving. This is the year. It stinks, but this is what the situation is. And particularly in an environment where if we looked for alternative solutions that didn't move people with limited notice, that if we were to go to the city council and say, we want additional modular classrooms, we want whatever, I think it's reasonable to anticipate that the politics of that request would, I think, that we would hear from the council, you have open classrooms at one of your elementary buildings. You didn't have the political will to deal with that at that time. We're not going to bail you out with modular classrooms.
Yeah, we essentially got, we were in that position the last budget cycle, and I think we got our hands slapped in that moment. And I think if we go back to that and we haven't solved this problem, then we will probably not be given the same grace. And the net result of that will be a worse experience for the students in this district and misused resources from the school board's perspective relative to what we have in the district. And I think both of those things are unacceptable. And so I think that's a lot of what is behind this process at this point. I did want to touch on into the plan a bit. So we went from 3 neighborhoods to 5 neighborhoods. the driver between 3 neighborhoods to 5 neighborhoods is because the numbers for the 3 neighborhoods didn't do enough at New Franklin to really solve the core issue. I think from the redistricting committee's perspective, the core issue at New Franklin, which is that it has drastically unequal space for intervention and special education relative to the other schools. And it is the position of the redistricting committee that by 100% making sure that at least one of the existing classrooms is available for those services, and then ideally another classroom can flex into that, that it will mitigate that situation without needing to ask for funds to increase the overall footprint of the building. I think we'll be in a better position relative to funds at New Franklin if we can say we've freed up space so that the funds we do spend can be used to make that space better and be targeted for the specific services that we want. So I think that's the nuance of the New Franklin conversation and why 2 neighborhoods were added to this conversation. And I fully recognize the timing of that, the disruption to the families, and it's extremely regrettable. I don't have a good answer, so I'm not going to try. I think, so moving on a bit in terms of, well, I don't have an answer in terms of like being able to retroactively fix that. I think we can attempt to do things in the plan that will ideally soften the blow for those families, but I don't know that that will be satisfactory either to those families. So on to the sort of where we are in the transition plan. We had gone into the meeting with the redistricting committee on the 2nd, like Carrie was saying, with this idea of these transition neighborhoods. And a transition neighborhood would have choice where we, and there would be that would be open-ended. So it wouldn't have a specific deadline associated with it. Where we came out of that meeting with on the 2nd was that net new families to the district would not have a choice. So if you were a family in Powder House and you don't have children enrolled, when you started in 26, 27, you wouldn't be able to choose New Franklin. You would be districted to Little Harbor. What's that?
25.
20 in
fall.
In 25, 26. Thank you. We're in 24. Yes. And that was a push from the administrators in that meeting. And this is one of the other things that we've been balancing, and specific to grandfathering, which is that the more we allow grandfathering and school choice, the more difficult it is for administrators to plan for their individual schools. And so I think we sort of pulled that back to what I just said in terms of new families. I think with the addition of Meadowbrook and Atlantic Heights, and the well-founded concerns and from the families there in terms of the amount of time they're having to digest this information, to make these difficult decisions, I do think going back into the redistricting committee, something we should definitely consider is a grace year for all of the neighborhoods, to say for the incoming year, so 25, 26, that net new families wouldn't, but that's just for 1 year. And I think that's something we need to discuss. I'm not saying that's that's not in this draft of the plan, but it is something that Carrie and I have certainly had conversations with families in those neighborhoods affected, and I don't know that it necessarily addresses their specific concerns, but I think it does offer some level of grace in terms of making a decision for the following year. But more to discuss on that. I think that sort of covers where the plan stands now in terms of the 5 neighborhoods. I can get into the where the numbers get us, all of that is in the draft of the report in terms of 5 years, 10 years out, where we think the district share will be based on the projections from NESDEC. I will say we have on the agenda this evening new NESDEC numbers. Those NESDEC numbers, I'll just say, across the board for the K-5 schools, offer a projection of slight decrease across the district. And when I put that into the our transition model, the net result was essentially, if you look out 8 years or 5 to 10 years from now, and the district share is equal as we have projected, we go from an average of 18 kids in the class in a particular school to 17 kids in a particular school. So the effect is felt sort of district-wide. It doesn't affect necessarily the overall plan or the sort of general trends of the different catchment areas. It's just sort of like district-wide. So I'll make that comment on like the new NESDEC numbers. So, you know, yeah.
So I think just to summarize, what will go to the next committee meeting is further discussion, if we've gotten it right from the feedback we got from the committee, that the transition neighborhood piece isn't there, but that that these 5 neighborhoods would be redistricted with a transition year. So kind of coming sort of at a compromise between the two options. Transition years 25, 26, where both new enrollment and everyone in those neighborhoods can choose between their current district school, so for instance, New Franklin, or Little Harbor, and that the board would be extending transportation and that student's enrollment through the duration of their completion. So they move away or whatever happens, or they finish 5th grade. And that in addition to that, siblings of currently enrolled students would be grandfathered. So that's sort of the plan. If I covered the things.
Yeah.
So I think also key, the bus service, is that if we are offering a formal option that we feel we need to, as a district, provide transportation, that is one of the rationales for where the neighborhoods are, based on distance to Little Harbor. What was the other name? Meadowbrook? Is that what you named the other neighborhood?
Coakley.
Coakley.
Coakley, Meadowbrook.
Sometimes Byron names neighborhoods and they like it, and then I guess this one was a bit. We'll change you back to Coakley.
I mean, not that it matters, but Meadowbrook was on the map, so I took what was on the map on that one, for the record.
Not a Byron creation.
But yeah, just so we get oriented a bit on the neighborhoods here. Powder House being here, can't really see this Powder House being here, Meadowbrook being here. To Carrie's point about the location, so if, and relative to busing, so if Powder House moves Lafayette, which is this here, and Meadowbrook, there is the location proximity of those 3 neighborhoods relative to each other presents an opportunity relative to busing is the rationale in terms of that. And then going over to Atlantic Heights, which is here, we know that Osprey is currently in Little Harbor, and the same sort of thought process is there, is that there is existing transportation in that neck of the woods, as so to say. So just sort of get a visual on the map as it stands. I very much appreciate the commenter earlier about how the map looks. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how the map looks and come to the conclusion that, unfortunately, and this was one of the early comments in the original library meeting, making the map pretty is not the goal. So yeah.
We did try that.
We did try that.
And there was clear feedback that was not the plan that people wanted. And it makes sense. It affects more students, period.
Yeah.
So that was really the reason that was eliminated.
So if we want to take, I think it's a good time for, if the board wants to ask questions on, any particular questions on the plan as it stands, the numbers, I think this is a great opportunity to do so.
Why don't you recognize?
Sure.
You
Oh,
two
Pip, go ahead.
recognize people.
Thanks.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say thank you very much for bringing this here tonight, giving us a chance to talk about it. I was, as you know, very nervous about trying to vote on it next week without this opportunity. I have a lot of questions, but when you talk about it, can you explain to me exactly what you mean by a transition year? Like, what does that actually mean?
Just that one extra year that we're talking about?
So it would be,
You said there would be a transition year, but I don't know what you mean. I don't know what would happen.
Previously, we talked about 25, 26 being all new enrollments from those neighborhoods would be expected to go to Little Harbor.
Okay.
With the addition of 2 more neighborhoods and generally maximizing parent choice and allowing families more time to process their decision. Because in reality, the decision is going to have to be made in probably March at the latest in order to plan for the following year. To put that as an open option for next year. So then starting 26, 27 would be new enrollments from those neighborhoods would go to.
So they have until then to decide, basically.
Yes.
Although they can opt into Little Harbor next
They can
year.
decide as soon as they want, but they have to decide by that point.
March of 26, effectively.
Yes.
Okay. And then when people decide that they want to do either one, finish out where they are or move, they're stuck with that decision, I assume.
So
They cannot
one-way
go back.
door. Yes.
Okay.
Can you talk more about one-way door?
Can they, yeah.
Yeah.
So they could decide to move to Little Harbor at any point.
We did get, that was part of the original discussion, and the feedback we got from administrators was that it should be like 1 year, 2 years max.
Okay.
So for instance, and these are part of the specifics, we do need their feedback on again, but let's say in March, people could opt in to go to Little Harbor if they so chose. The following year, they would have a choice point, say in March, and at that point, they would have to make their decision. The concern was just the constant changes, and from a staff perspective, having,
I think there was general concern on, you get in a situation where there's like a bad experience in 1 year, and you use that as an opportunity to move schools. That was like feedback from the administrators. So I think that plays into, there is a choice, but it isn't an open door. There is a period of time, but it is a one-way door. Yeah.
Because in the long term, we have a long-term interest in moving people to Little Harbor.
Right.
So once you make that choice to go to Little Harbor, the door closes behind you.
Yeah.
But I think I'm also hearing if you make the choice to stay, you stay.
You stay.
For the rest of your time.
I was
You don't
confused
get-
about that,
You
so
don't get
thank
to
you.
move 2
Yes.
years later or whatever.
Yeah, and again, that's feedback from administrators around planning, like being able to best understand numbers. There's been discussion in the committee meetings for administrators about resourcing, whether it's teachers or other resourcing associated with like the population of the students and where they are. And so I think that plays into that.
And I was going to say, we really start our budget process where people are trying to think about their needs, human resources, materials, equipment. I mean, those are conversations where we're really starting in August and September. We can make some adjustments as we get close, but if it's really fluid and we're in May, it's very difficult because we can do some. When we get into the budgeting process, there'll be a certain element of redistribution of the staff that we have based on where students go, but that there can be scenarios where that won't, just shuffling kind of the chairs around won't be enough to cover the needs based on where the clusters are and all those types of things. So I think that was part of the conversation as well with principals.
Okay. And is this decision per family or per child?
Child.
Okay.
Yes. So so siblings get an option, right? And so at family level, if my third grader stays, I can choose my pre-K, whatever, to stay as well. But I can also, if my third grader stays, my pre-K can go. Yeah.
And that was really based on neighborhoods wanting to have kids of the same age together. And so for some families that might not be as feasible, or they make that decision, but we're hoping to put it in the hands of the family.
Yeah. And I wanna call out here too, like there's no perfect way to do a transition, because ultimately in any neighborhood, different families may need to prioritize in this scenario one school over another, and that might be the same as their neighbor. There's no, unless you didn't do grandfathering, right? That's the other side of that coin, is if you don't do grandfathering and you just move everybody, then those conversations don't have to happen. But then you lose choice, you lose the ability to stay in the communities of the schools that you've become a part of. So I think there's no good side of that coin, unfortunately.
And I would say some people have articulated that. We've had people who have come to the board, and I think in meetings we've had people articulate it as the plan will split the neighborhood potentially. And I don't know, and I think it goes back to, you've got, there's a juxtaposition between giving families choice about what they're going to do and having unified action within a neighborhood. And you really can't do both those things simultaneously. And so I think the lean has been through the work that we've been doing, and in the draft right now, the lean in that conversation is towards more family choice, but at the cost of potentially splitting neighborhoods based on what the choices are the families make.
One thing that hasn't happened, that's like in my dream scenario that is unlikely, is like, you know what, we're the Pine neighborhood and we're all gonna go. Let's all move together and do this now. And I think that was one of the hopeful pieces that we were hoping in the survey, that we would be like, oh, this whole neighborhood is like ready to move. I think there's potential for more of that to happen. I think what we got from the survey are people that are like ready to move now, regardless of what their neighborhood does. But that potential is there for folks to move together.
And I think we have some theories about kind of just the sociology of how people are going to make choices, and that what is reflected. I think if we had to guess, that from what's I think, and maybe if you guys don't agree, if we had to guess from the individual feedback we got from specific addresses and having an idea of where people are, we think, if anything, I think as we move into it, there's going to be more movement, not less. That the initial response is going to be more like, don't move me. And then as people start to hear, oh, the Johnsons are deciding they're making the move, maybe we're going to go. That if we would see some type of marginal difference, my prediction would be you're going to see more movement, not less, from what we got in the surveys. But that's me.
Okay. Shall I keep going, or would you like to call on someone else?
Does anyone else want to?
So far, Pip's been
Go
asking
ahead,
the questions
Pip.
in my head, so
Oh, good.
keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. Well, the big question I have had, and I think I've heard the principals speak to this as well, is I understand that changing the number of equalizing the proportion of students in each building is what we're trying to do. But it doesn't, what I'm still not seeing is how this is going to make a difference in terms of the classroom, the actual space availability. Because if we only have a couple kids leaving classrooms at New Franklin, that doesn't open up a whole classroom. It opens up one or two spots in multiple classrooms. So how is this actually going to fill the empty space at Little Harbor, and how is it going to change anything in New Franklin?
Yep. So I think I can illustrate that, actually.
Can you blow? It's really not readable.
Not readable.
No, it's just big blotches. It's like a abstract
Can we read
painting.
numbers? Can we read the numbers on the left?
Once you
That's
get
what
in,
really matters.
once you get in close, you can see some of the roads.
Can we read the numbers on the left?
We're getting there.
Okay.
And just to say that this is a program that Byron made. This is not something like this is like his coding work that we can't like post this tool publicly. If that makes it's just not.
That's fair.
I mean, unless you want to start paying him, but then we would have to lose him from the board.
And this I would just say quickly on that. Just this goes back to this. We could have contracted this work out to consultants and probably wouldn't have gotten, I think, I'm pretty confident, would not have gotten as good a product in terms of what's been developed to do this analysis if we farmed it out to the people who are like, well, we do this work in, Greater
Yeah,
Boston.
Power
blah,
School
blah,
just
blah.
got hacked, so.
And, yeah, there you go.
There it is.
you go. So,
okay, so New Franklin, these numbers here show if you take Powderhouse, Atlantic Heights, and Meadowbrook from New Franklin, there's a net of 57 students that are going to be moving, and this is the distribution across the grades, K through 6. This is, now mind you, this is current enrollment, and that's different than the enrollment 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So there's some assumptions in the thinking here. And just to go over that really quick, the assumption in the thinking here is that Powderhouse, Atlantic Heights, and Meadowbrooks are New Franklin neighborhoods. New Franklin has had steady population for the last 10 years. So the assumption is here that 5 years from now, the same number of kids in Powderhouse will be there as are today. There's 37 in Powderhouse, or approximately 37 there now. 5 years from now, there'll be approximately 37 kids. And so the assumption here is that if we move these three neighborhoods, 57 move, and this is the distribution across the grades. And you end up with 14 sections, which is the target at New Franklin. And there's some, you have and this program what it doesn't do a good job of, is it doesn't do a good job of the art of the administrator when they're like, we need 3 sections in the lower grades and 2 sections in the upper grades because of the demographics of those grades and how those interactions. It just is trying to make the best guess estimate. But that said, if you look at these numbers in terms of section size, the number of students in those particular grades, I think it is clear to me that what this does do is does offer those 2 sections to be open in New Franklin. So to the specific question, does these 3 neighborhoods, if they are moved, offer the 2 classrooms? I would say yes. The answer to that question is yes. And I think, especially under the assumption that those 3 neighborhoods will have some approximate number of students in them in 10 years as they do today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's once everybody transitions.
That is once everybody transitions. Yes, and I think that's, yeah.
The immediate point is for New Franklin to not go up to 16 classrooms, because there's the 1 classroom that's used for Italian and all of these other things. And so the goal would be that, and that was sort of not less likely with the transition year, but the idea that kindergartners are going to be more likely to go to Little Harbor, and therefore hope that would maintain, or there would be 2 Ks instead of 3 Ks next year. The data we have about from survey respondents and from daycares is currently 28 kindergartners, but we know that is wildly inaccurate in lots of ways. In the meantime, there could be 5 third graders there could be all these transitions. So it's the only shot, though, I think, of maintaining the suite as the primary end all and be all room. And then in addition to this, and can ask Zach more about the process if he's comes back to us, but there's renovation plan for New Franklin for next year. What exactly that is has not been determined. But I think it would be the potential that, to me, it means the potential that they could take that classroom off permanently as a primary classroom, because we have a plan in place that frees up that classroom now and will continue that going forward. Does that?
Okay, yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the point about its impact over time versus immediate is a good one, and I think it illustrates the one of the choices we made relative to grandfathering, right? Is grandfathering means that the impact is not immediate, which is I think is a choice we're making. Yeah.
Okay, I'm wondering if you could speak to the Meadowbrook choice a little bit. I thought that the public comment on the walkability of that neighborhood to New Franklin was very compelling, and I'm wondering if there are any other options of places that size that we could consider, and or could we consider one of the new developments that doesn't have people in it yet to move the same number of families?
Yeah. My thought on this is the logic I go down on this is that I think we were late in adding Atlantic Heights and Meadowbrook in December. I think adding a neighborhood in January is even worse. I could see.
Well, I'm talking about a neighborhood where people haven't moved in yet, like one of the new construction.
Yeah, I think we can definitely. I think we can
If this is gonna be stretched out over a number of years anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an alternative that doesn't have families in it yet.
I don't think that moves kids out of New Franklin, though. I mean, that potentially prevents kids from starting there.
Okay, I see.
Which I think is good, and maybe we should do that. But I don't think it's a trade in terms of Meadowbrook. Yeah.
I would say, as a reminder, all the new stock housing had been going to Little Harbor, and we weren't seeing the benefit. And so our clear guidance from the trends over time is really just that New Franklin is likely to stay consistent. And where we need a decrease, it does mean transitioning neighborhoods away from New Franklin.
Yeah, I think on Meadowbrook specifically, candidly, I think an argument could be made that it isn't necessary but I think that it would be wise to include it. It does make the most sense in terms of district share. It's a small number, but these things add up.
But we don't have another similar neighborhood that is closer to Little Harbor, or
no.
Or we could that same number.
So will you just go over to the map up there?
It's getting a little squished, but
or can you get rid of the numbers for a second?
I can.
So I think really what we come down to as far as like the neighborhoods and walkability is that with New Franklin, you end up being really limited about which neighborhoods could move. And so essentially the Panaway and Oxford, they share a bus, they go to New Franklin, that's one option. The numbers there could potentially overwhelm Little Harbor. And so that was really the decision. The other factor I think we have talked about it before in this process and like early on is just that, although we don't have a perfect metric for socioeconomic diversity and making sure that we have balance in our schools, free and reduced lunch is kind of one proxy that has been used. And the driver of free and reduced, or the neighborhoods that have the highest free and reduced lunch, if one of those moves schools, it totally shifts the socioeconomic balance. So although we're not like 15%, 15%, 15% free and reduced lunch at the schools, any one move of those neighborhoods like puts it to 21 and 4, if that makes sense. So really the options for potential move for New Franklin and another piece that I think we talked about early on and we haven't changed on the map, but is out of 6 neighborhood just to make it, but there's Cuts Cove, which is also on the map, which is next to Atlantic Heights. It doesn't have currently enrolled students. There are children in that neighborhood, but they currently go to private school as far as we know. And so that could also be moved if there are children that move in and are going to public school. Again, it doesn't affect kids now. So sorry, back to, so neighborhoods that are not walkable that could potentially be moved: Cuts Cove, Panaway, Oxford, Powder House, Meadowbrook, Gosling, and Atlantic Heights. And the only ones that make sense for numbers, so that there's no potential way we're gonna then be overburdening Little Harbor, are the 3 that we had provided, and potentially Cuts Cove in addition, because it has 0 change right now.
Yeah, but it does seem like it makes sense, since it wouldn't affect any families right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet it wouldn't add to the burden.
I think because we focused on talking to families so much, it has sort of gotten forgotten in the
the discussion of, and I think it's a good follow-up, which is past the neighborhoods that would move, calling out some of the work that had done previously in terms of identifying these things and where they should go in the future. I think that's still something that committee can focus on past this, moving of existing enrolled students. Yeah.
I guess my last question is, are you feeling like the principals feel good about this plan?
That's
so, and this is like our lesson learned. So when we started this process and started digging into what was done before in last spring, we had a lot of different folks that previously served on redistricting when it was done, et cetera, et cetera. And most of what we heard was that we had lots of different, neighborhood representatives, and whoever was more vocal and powerful got what they want. And it was a pretty heated process that probably didn't focus on equity or even logistics. It was a little beyond those. And so expressly, we had discussed different options for committee membership. We were like, it's really important to have the administrators because they know about the transitions and they know their kids. But when it comes down to it, if I'm a principal at Pine School and you're my favorite parent and you're in Pine neighborhood, and I mean, and not to oversimplify it, but our principals do not want to lose any of their neighborhoods. They have long-term investments in families in multiple generations, and so we really put them in a very impossible position for them to, personally, because they're members of the community as well, to say that. At our last meeting, Kate, as was mentioned, Principal Callahan did voice, this just feels different than other committees that I've been on. And one of the points was the minutes aren't coming back for approval, so maybe there's things she wanted to clarify. I think the hard part is it's a board committee, so we get our prompts from Paula 4 days in, I need to post those minutes, where are those minutes? And so we're posting draft minutes. I'm getting in a...
Yeah, on the process.
Sorry.
Let me just comment a bit on my, I think...
Wait, let me just finish.
Yeah, okay.
I'm back on track.
Yeah.
I think we'll ask them to vote or to put their vote or to abstain, but we just want to frame that they may vote no, they may abstain, they may be in support. We're trying to be responsive to what the feedback we got, and that plan will be there. I do think, if the board wants to say that we need them here to present a plan, that's going to be not good for them in a variety of ways. I think that would be within... the board could do that, but I would not recommend it. And I feel already bad about the position we've asked them to be in. Again, hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, I would just echo what Carrie has said around the principals for the schools who have neighborhoods leaving. I agree. I think it's an impossible position for them to say, I think this neighborhood should leave my school. I think that's a really hard thing to say. And I think Principal Lawson from Little Harbor hasn't had to say that. because they're all coming her way. And so her concerns have been more on the planning side, and specifically talking about the grandfathering plan, and because she's rightfully so concerned about planning and what's coming into her school. And I think that represents the administrator of those schools' concerns. And so I think it's so that's sort of like how I would frame where their positions have been. Yeah, and I'll leave it up to other minds to decide whether or not they should come before the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, and I did think of one more thing, which is just that we continue to hear from the public. I know we've heard that they feel you've been responsive to their feedback, which is great. But I think I'm still hearing people say, wait, can you slow this down? Can you just slow this process down? So when you hear that, is there any value in slowing down the process? Would anything change in your mind at this point, or do you feel like you've arrived at the very best solution and there's no reason to extend the time period?
I think if we waited a year, which I think if we don't make a decision this month, we're basically doing. I think if we wait a year, then services at New Franklin is a coin flip in terms of them getting worse. And I think that's probably maybe the biggest fallout from that choice. The other fallout from that choice is, personally, I don't think I can spend another 200 hours on this project. And so I think I would probably not be up for it. And if there's another avenue for that, I think that's I'd be interested to see the output of that.
I don't see the plan changing with more time, and I think that there's ways that people can have that time and get informed and make their decisions in the time frame if we offer the transition. But I just don't see another practical configuration based on all the work we've done. And I would, and if the board does not move forward with the redistricting plan that we present, that is the right of the board. But I would highly recommend then doing it now, because, so I think the vote should happen now either way. I think we need consulting, and we need to hand this off and invest money in it to have a different process if we delay it, just because the bandwidth of 2 volunteers has been expended.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think, and I'm echoing something I said the other day, the politics of this choice, I don't think are going to change radically in a year, in 2 years. It will still, we'll be having a similar conversation with different people voicing, similar types of opinions. They're still valid. Those are all valid opinions, but I don't think it's going to radically change the kind of the politics of the stress that comes with having to have your children transition. I think that's going to be similar regardless. So I think, so I don't see that going away in any way with another year or two. So.
I will just add that we do get feedback from folks that are a little more on the do this. This should have already been done. This should have already been decided. And there is a piece of just prolonging, what's the word?
Inevitable.
Prolonging the inevitable, but just more unknown. Just people feeling make the decision so that I can make my decision for our family and have enough time, and concerned that the longer we push this, a March deadline is really hard to really process with your family what that would mean. So. Is that it?
Other questions from the board on the plan?
I don't have questions, but I would like to say thank you for this. When it comes to data gathering and analysis, that's definitely not my strong suit. So I certainly appreciate what you've done and how you've broken it down. Also, as a parent who raised her kids in this district, I do understand it's a passionate subject. Your kids being educated is their base for the rest of their lives. So I do really appreciate that it seems that you have listened to the community about the families making the choice and being grandfathered in and giving that time of letting the families choose. And I just really appreciate that. I understand that things were changed very quickly last month. But I do see the result of it, and I do think it was a right choice to make, to offer the grandfathering in and the extra year transition period. I think that's it will give families time to analyze what's best for them and their kids. So I just appreciate that.
Thank you. Lisa.
I think Pip asked like about 90% of my questions, so I don't want to repeat those. I also appreciate that we've arrived at a place where we have a lot of family choice, because I do respect the desire to have neighborhoods stay together, but I think as a parent who's had kids in multiple elementary schools at the same time in the past, that's brutal if that's a choice that you don't want. So I do think ultimately that prioritizing family choice is really important. There's one piece of this that I do not understand that I'm really curious about, which is how does it impact staffing and budgeting, since we're starting our budget conversation, and I believe we've had guidance around no new staff hypothetically. So how, like if we vote on this in January and it passes, and then we're hearing from families in March about their choices, some of them may move next year, some of them may make a choice the following year. So walk me through hypothetically in a best case scenario, like how does that play out?
So year one would be, we're marching through our budgetary process. And we come to conclusions around basically a status quo type of setup if we haven't come to a resolution yet. And then we would reallocate staff based on the choices families make. But I mean, the complication in all this too is our dialogue is not the final dialogue. So we come to the board's proposal based on, when we get the conversation later tonight, we'll talk about the fact that that's not going to be before February break. That's going to be now maybe March 4th, March 11th. Then there'll be a conversation with the city manager about what she intends to include or not include from our proposal. That will go to the city council. There's still an opportunity to advocate for things that she may decide she's not going to include in her suggestions to the city council. And then we'll go through the city council process, which will go April into June.
Yes.
So, and things could happen over the course of that process, which could change what we, have available to us. So that's a long response. The short answer is we would take what we have built a budget around what we have, because we don't know what we don't have in terms of what's going to happen with this plan, and then we would reallocate the best we can to address the needs based on the choices that families make. Now, I apologize, my coughing fit, I wasn't in the room. I think one of the things you would hear from principals would be, it goes back to planning, is that can make planning very difficult, and there are things that we may not, after we go through families making their choices, and then we get into our period of time where we're going through all these different budgetary processes, we might not be able to respond in a way that that is as in line with the family choices as we would do if there was no family choice. right? So there's less variables for us to try to determine. We still every year are going to have certain families move in and move out of the district. So I think that on the administrative side, when we think about maintaining the quality of programming that we have, I think there is some trepidation at times on the principal side about what are we making choices that are going to solve this problem that we have. We know there will be there's going to be pain and emotional pain for families around transitions and those types of things. But is the plan reasonably designed to fix the problem that we have now in a period of time where we can semi-predict the variables? And the longer, and again, we talked about, I was saying this before, about the juxtaposition between family choice and splitting up neighborhoods. The longer we stretch out choice, the further out, the less confident we are in what the variables are in our community that could have an impact on the effectiveness of the plan to deliver on the results that we're hoping for. So I think you'd hear those, a mishmash of those types of things from principals, but it goes back to your, like, well, what does that, this year, what would having a transition look like that we don't fully understand while we're having a budget conversation? That could continue for multiple years. So, and that's something that we would have to. So again, and in that, there's a value choice about the fact that we would sacrifice some of the precision of our planning, which would include budgeting, in order to value comparatively more families making choices about where their students are going to go.
Maybe I would ask the question differently, because I understand what you're saying, but I think maybe what I'm really asking is, I understand when we get to the end, if everything happens and eventually we're done grandfathering and we've made this decision and then hopefully we've rebalanced the schools so there's more proportional equity, that totally makes sense. I think where I'm having trouble understanding is if we fast forward just a year or two and we've perhaps trickled out maybe, I don't know, 4 third graders and 5 second graders and 2 first graders. It doesn't seem like that frees up New Franklin space yet, and it doesn't seem like it's adding enough kids to Little Harbor to necessarily justify another teacher. So that's where I think I'm trying to understand in those transition years, like, would we be hiring any temporary staff, or how are we managing this sort of little bubble of weird movement? Do you know what I mean? Because we might not know until the very end. K registration goes until they show up in August.
Right, and we don't always know, right? We don't.
So that's where I don't understand completely what happened.
Yeah, and I think we won't know fully until those scenarios, we're presented with those scenarios and have to respond. Excuse me. Oh, it's okay, right? So I don't have an answer for that because I don't know. We will do the best we can to ensure the mission of the school district with an eye towards equity, with whatever scenario we're presented with on the administrative side. I can't answer that question with any more depth because it's dependent upon a whole bunch of choices by a whole bunch of people in our community.
Yeah, I do think, I appreciate that, and I think it does talk to the value in terms of parent choice versus making more direct change. I do think, though, that that level of those years of uncertainty, I think next year, and if we have this transition year, the year after that, but I think the number of choices, will tail off quickly after that. And so I think you'll probably have a pretty good notion in terms of where the families in each neighborhood are going by year 3 in the plan.
And I think we also have we're most confident, I think, in our NASDAQ stuff. If you've read the NASDAQ methodology, clearly, NASDAQ will say in their overall projection about where we're at, they're most confident in 3 years out.
Yeah.
And then after that, they have to do some predicting.
So just on on the staffing, I think at some point modulars go away at Don Darrow. There's 2 teachers in there, and they were in Little Harbor. They go back to Little Harbor. Our projections are the numbers continue to decline at Little Harbor. My fear is we lose the justification for a position if we don't make sure that we're using the positions we have correctly. And I think that's a real concern.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I think all of the plans were based on 55 primary classrooms to keep constant, and understanding that there might be even smaller class sizes because the projection is overall decrease, but that the bubble is essentially addressed by stable 55 primary classroom teachers. If that.
I might add too, Byron, like you said, the question I always have with administrators when they need somebody is, how do we utilize the assets we currently have rather than hire somebody? It's not something that they're probably not used to. It's just where I came from, and that's something that this budget coming up is a main theme of. Is
I mean, I think bigger picture in the city. I think I think if you get a tax bill, if you get a tax bill, I think depending on where you live in the city, that was somewhat in line with what you might have expected, or greatly out of line with what you may have expected. And I think the dynamic, unfortunately, for families in a city with a demographic like ours, is the economic winds are against them to some degree in terms of the and so I think it's really important and critical that we do a good job with the resources we have, especially in this climate.
Do we want to go to process?
Let's do process. Well, no, I mean anyone else. Sorry, I don't want to cut anyone else off. So if there's any more questions on plan. Yep.
Is the plan going to include anything about new development?
The one, as far as the housing piece, we can put that, but that's pretty far off. We did reach out to the Christmas tree development. We didn't hear back. Just scouring their plans. There are 2, 3, 4 bedroom units there, so that might be more likely to have families. There's no overt design to be family friendly. There's no playground space. There's no outdoor space. My assumption would be it would be more like for young professionals paying $1,200 a month a piece to share a 4-bed or something to that effect. We don't know that, and we don't know if, aside from us looking at the plans, whether there's any family friendly piece. The list of developments that we do have from planning, we can include in that report. It's not currently there. It is deep in one of our PowerPoints somewhere, though, so we'll pull that forward.
So we're not sort of just deciding preemptively that any new developments are going to Little Harbor?
I don't think in this plan we've called that out. I think I'm more. I think just generally as a board member, I'd be open to that sort of decision making more ad hoc than this plan. And I think those sort of decisions, if the redistricting committee is presented with, if we want to discuss those things and like come up, I think there's less risk associated with doing those things. So we can make those analysis and yeah. Okay. So that was talked about the plan. I know there's concerns about the process, and I think it's important that we have space for it at the board level to talk about those things. So I think now is a good time to do it. Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I want to maybe start with just the forward-casting piece of the process questions, just so we're really clear from today forward of what's happening. So what is the date of the next committee meeting?
22nd.
And at 6 p.m.
Right. So at that meeting, there will be a vote of all of the committee members on whether or not to pass the proposal that you've just shared tonight.
And whether or not to recommend.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
But it will be what you just presented. Like, we're not reiterating it or revising it again.
The only changes relative to the draft plan that's in there now is the specific transition year that we talked about.
Okay.
and there was some small language. Joanne objected to the use of the word immediate impact in one place, so we're going to change that. Yeah.
And when is the next communication going out district-wide so that people in the affected neighborhoods know what's happening?
So the meeting on the 22nd is posted on the city website currently. There isn't an agenda up, but we'll get an agenda up as soon as we can, and then
We can do a parent square.
We can do,
post.
yeah.
It's we have not traditionally, we have done parent square posts in some situations. We don't parent square post. We do a lot of meetings and we don't parent square post all those meetings. But I'm happy to, based on the criticism we received, to put out a parent square post connected to the meeting on the 22nd.
I would say, generally speaking, I totally understand that your average parent in the district may not necessarily desire to be alerted every time the school board meets or has a committee meet, but I think in this case, if we can err on the side of giving people, like, say, 2 weeks notice, or at least more than a few days of heads up about exactly what the plan is, how the transition pieces will work to the best of our ability, and what neighborhoods we're talking about.
So-
just because I think the last meeting, it was kind of late on a Friday for a Sunday conversation.
Absolutely. So I think, if the plan, the draft plan lays out the 5 neighborhoods, the transition plan as it stands today, if we get that agenda up, this week, with the parent square notification, hopefully that's sort of within the bounds of what you're asking.
No, I think that would help a lot.
Okay.
And I don't know how the mechanism works for communication, but I feel like for this one, Zach, it might not be terrible to consider more of a snow day level alert. Like, we're doing this, the vote is coming, these are the neighborhoods, and like actually have the robocall go out to people, because not everybody reads the emails. I know they're great, but I mean, my spouse doesn't read them. I'll call him out right here. He has no idea, like, I'm going to the school board until like 5 minutes after the meeting starts, and he wonders where dinner is. So, I think that not everybody gets the information, no matter what you do, and maybe just trying a little extra on this one just to give people every opportunity to know. So if there's any last feedback or questions from families, they're heard before we vote. That's, for me as a board member, really important for me to feel comfortable voting, if that's the intention.
I just want to maybe get a little more discussion about the robocall, because to me that's emergency use only.
It doesn't necessarily have to be an emergency call, but I think something more than just a passive, I mean, I don't know how many parent square alerts I get over the course of the day with kids in multiple schools, but it can be a lot. There's the choir mattress fundraiser, there's something about basketball, there's something about, I don't know what else. So to somehow call this out so it really jumps to people, in whatever way you think is best, I mean, if it can't be an emergency alert, that's fair. But it just seems like it should be more than just a passive message that flows through, or like the 87th item at the end of a newsletter that goes out once a week, just to really make sure that people are seeing it.
Yeah, the other thing I could think of is there's social, but there's also print media.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I think that I just want to go on the record, because I feel like I have tried my best to raise some questions about the process, just so that as we're going forward with our work, we can perhaps recalibrate a little bit how we do it. I understand that legally the state of New Hampshire says the minimum you're required to do is say the time and place about 48 hours before you show up for a meeting, and that the minutes at a minimum are really only required to say who's there and who voted on something. And I get that, but I think as people representing families in our community, I just feel like we should do better. And I know that we try to do better. I just think that I'd like to see a budget conversation about fixing the audio and fixing the Zoom, so that we don't perennially have the problem of, it's not your fault that the technology didn't work in the room with the crazy, terrible heat rattling around in the background. But I feel like us as a board and a district, we should find a way to do better. Like, we should find a way for it to be accessible on Zoom, and we should find a way for the recordings to be available and audible and visible. Just, I know it's a tight budget year, but I don't think it would cost a huge amount of money to mic a room that we could have our meetings in and then intentionally schedule meetings in.
I think I would just ask that maybe a more formal proposal of what the expectations are comes from this, because other things are not simultaneous on Zoom, and it felt like before we got the request, we got the critique, and so I would just like to make sure that it's across the board. All of our committee meetings will be on ABC, so I think that really needs to be a more formal proposal instead of mentioned at a meeting.
And I did make the request to our chair and vice chair multiple times throughout the process, so it's not the first time I've brought it up. But I agree with you, it should be consistent for all of the committees, and we should just generally have that level of accessibility.
Pip.
I'm wondering if, in addition to the agenda being shared and the notice going out, could you share the actual plan? Because it sounds like it's pretty close to the way. Because I think the way these meetings have gone, the plan has been shared at the meeting, and then it's kind of like there's a lot of alarm about it. But if we could if we had time to look at the plan ahead of time, then people could come with questions specific to it or concerns specific to it.
Yeah, it was linked on the 2nd, and it's been public and on the site as well, I believe, since the meeting on the 2nd. But we can definitely make sure.
I mean, revised for what you're going to share at the next meeting.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll post it on the agenda, and then I think too we'll put our minutes into the agenda, which had the links. So like right now, the agenda has information, and then the minutes have the narrative, but they're not together. Does that make sense? Never mind.
Well, I'm talking about the upcoming meeting.
Yes. So like for the similar. So I guess my question
minutes
is.
From the last meeting would be with that.
So if you look at the agenda for the 2nd.
Yes.
And the materials that are there, we would plan to post similar. What I'm trying to figure out is if there's a different request or if that's sufficient.
No, I think that's sufficient. I just would like to be able to see the plan before it's presented at the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Lisa.
And I just wanted to ask one other thing, and I understand that, I may be in a minority opinion about this, but I do remain somewhat nervous as a board member about voting for a plan that would redistrict all of our elementary kids without having an opportunity to have a conversation with the principals. And I think earlier on in the process, I asked about this and suggested it could be a work session or that there could be a committee meeting where the board members were allowed to come to the committee and actually ask questions and speak. And those pieces, there was decisions made to not do that, and we're done with that piece. But from where we're at right now, I respect that it's a difficult spot, but I also feel like at the end of the day, if I have questions about how this is going to play out that come up as we're reviewing the plan and talking about it, it just feels irresponsible for me not to be able to ask the people who are going to be on the ground implementing it how it's going to roll out. And I don't mean to put them on the spot or create unnecessary tensions within our school communities, but I don't know how else to be able to ask directly if I want to follow up on some piece of how special ed will improve at New Franklin or how Little Harbor will be maybe kind of reallocating classrooms. It just feels difficult to vote on something where we're not able to ask questions of the people doing the work in the way that we normally do when it's any other type of major board decision. So I'll just put that out there one more time. I may be the only one who thinks that this is necessary, but I do feel like I'm concerned about voting on something where we're not able to have a dialogue with them in some forum.
I would echo that sentiment. You're not alone. I feel the same way.
Might I suggest just a motion, because I think that this keeps coming up and we don't have clear guidance from the board on what the board wants.
And I'll make a motion to put an agenda item on the next board meeting prior to the vote on redistricting that allows us to have a dialogue with the 3 elementary principals about the plan being brought to us for a vote.
Second.
So I have excuse me, discussion. I go back to the discussion that principals might be put on the spot. Because as was mentioned, they don't want to lose their families. And to come here and speak publicly might be putting them in an uncomfortable situation. That's my concern. I certainly understand talking with professionals that are on the ground and how all of this is going to work for them, but I also don't want to put them in a position where they have to speak on, losing the families that, for generations have been at some of these schools. That would be my concern of bringing the principals here.
I would just add that I think my position is pretty clear, that as a board chair, I'm happy to invite them, but I don't want to require them by any means. But I think because of that, and because it was part of my choice as a committee chair, I'll abstain from a vote on the motion in general, because I think it's more up to what the board is comfortable with, and not me in my position as chairing that.
I would be happy with inviting them to come if they choose to, but I wouldn't want to make it a mandatory thing.
So I would just say that Nancy and I have had some conversation about this, and I appreciate the concerns people have echoed around putting principals in a difficult spot. I think it is the day after the decision, the principals are the ones who have to maintain the culture of their school communities, and it is possible that some aspects of their of the professional opinion they may give you will damage their ability to maintain those school communities to a certain extent. And I appreciate the desire to be able to talk to what are some of the challenges that would be inherent within a particular plan. I will say, that as part of some of the public dialogue, we've had parents who have emailed us quoting principals. I think that makes it difficult not to have principals part of the conversation. And so I, from the beginning, I will be really transparent that my work with, my desire with principals at the beginning was to have us in a position where I, as a superintendent of schools, did not put them in a position where what we're talking about happening would happen, in all honesty. But I think we are to a point based on, if you watch the last meeting, there's definitely some concerns about some aspects of the plan. And we've had parents on multiple occasions claim to represent principals' opinions, saying principals don't want this, and email the board based on those conversations that they claim to have had with principals. Once that happens, then it's hard not to then have those principals come and speak to those things that members of the public are saying that they're saying. So, I, despite having the concerns that I've had, I think it would be appropriate to have principals part of that conversation on the 28th. But I would say, I know we talked about I don't know, on the 22nd, it sounds like we're not talking about much flexibility in what we're going to do on the 22nd beyond confirming those couple of pieces.
Yes.
So
the minor iteration, as I'm seeing it, minor iteration around the transition year, some small language change.
Yeah.
But generally, the plan is as in its draft form is what it is. Yeah.
All right. And I will, what I've articulated to originally with principals, the conversation was really about, I talked to them about kind of being consultants in the work. I think that was kind of the model, and they've been pulled in more and more. And it's not by any malfeasance by anybody or anything. It's just kind of the way in which it's kind of played out. And so I think I will tell. I'm going to tell them to be as honest as they can be, if they feel like they can be in those conversations about their perspective and where they're coming from in relation to elements they support or they have concerns about in relation to the plan overall.
Yeah. My feeling on this is, it's good to hear you say that, Zach. my feeling is that I want genuinely that the board members who are voting on this is like, I think the gravity of the decision is not lost on me, and I understand the request of that board members want to have as much information as they can. And so I have my reservations about this for the things that we've mentioned before. And I also question a little bit the purpose. I mean, it's breaking down a little bit the walls of the work of the committee. And I have some concerns there. All that said, I will support it. I think if it's important to board members and make them feel more comfortable to at least make a vote. I think that we, I'll support it. So, yeah. Oh, I don't know who's driving the pit. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I completely recognize that this puts the principals in a difficult position, and I'm sure it's not one they enjoy. And it's not one that any of us enjoy, I don't think. I mean, we all see the impact that it's going to have on families and that it already has. But I think that sometimes we have to do difficult things, and the principals do that every day, and it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate part of their role. And I agree with Lisa that to be informed and to feel comfortable making a decision, I really want to hear from them. I would hate to make a decision that they felt, wasn't going to work for their school. And I don't feel like I can do that in good conscience without being able to talk directly to them, or to at least have them unanimously vote to recommend this proposal. So I don't know if that's going to happen at your meeting or not, but I would feel much more comfortable if they were here to weigh in on it.
Mm-hmm. And I only wish that was like part of our conversation and asking them to be on the committee, and
yes.
we were very upfront of like, here's what we see happening. We'll be presenting this. We need you as our educational experts, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that's just it was not a hard thing they signed up for, but I understand the.
Well, I think whether they were on the committee or not, I'd still want to talk to them. I mean, I don't think, for me, that doesn't make such a difference. It's that
Right,
they're
gotcha,
the ones most
gotcha.
impacted
That
by
makes
this
sense.
decision, besides the kids and the families. So they're the only ones who know what's going to happen in their school when it happens, and what changes it's going to make.
I will not support the motion. I think it's putting principals in a very awkward situation. I think if you read the minutes, if you watch the videos, if you go to the next meeting, I think you'll get a real good sense of how the principals feel. They're not totally invested in this, and I think to ask them to come here before the board is awkward and puts them in a really difficult situation. I think Kerry and Byron have been very open about how what the sentiment is of the principals, and I just think it's unfair to them. So I will not vote for the motion.
Exactly sure. Yeah, I think we should
Patty?
vote.
Roll call vote.
Yeah.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
No.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Abstain.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
All right, so I think we're back in process. Is there any more discussion you want to have on that?
Also, just say time check in general, we're at 9:52, so we'll need to probably would be wise at this point to make a decision about how far you have a 10 o'clock rule. You need to suspend the rules to carry on the meeting. So we probably need to make a decision about an extension of time, and what, how much of the rest of the agenda are we getting to this evening?
Yep.
And whether we need to push off these items till a future meeting.
Do we have a motion to go beyond 10 PM?
Motion to suspend the rules and go to 10:30.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have to take a roll call for that, Pat?
Tish Campbell.
No.
Nancy Kleberg.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
No.
Brian French.
Brian?
Brian? Yes, no?
Yes.
Byron?
Yes.
Carrie?
No.
Lisa?
Yes.
4 yeses, 3 nos.
Okay, so let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Do we have to go through each one, or can we just say?
Wait a minute, so it needs a supermajority in order to suspend the rules.
Oh.
I'm just looking at whether or not it's a 2/3 majority of members,
I'll change
members
to
present.
yes.
2/3 majority of members present. So the motion would fail
Mhm.
to suspend the rules.
But Carrie just
based on
changed
the
her vote. 10:30.
Can I make a motion to extend to 10:15 and prioritize the personnel matters that require a vote and response, including the resignations and the leave of absence requests, and essentially turf the rest of the agenda to the next meeting?
Can I just ask Pip, are there any policies that you feel need to be acted on tonight?
Let me just confirm, but I don't think so. Maybe Patty would want to weigh in on that. No.
Nothing, no, we can
No, I don't think so.
those.
But I would second that and perhaps add the acceptance of the
Gifts.
donations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Donations, correspondence, and leave of absence.
All right, let's
Roll call vote. Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Kleberg.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Brian?
Yes.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Harry Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport. 7-0, so we continue to
There you go.
10:15.
Okay, so let's go to the item on the agenda that's correspondence, correct? Letter of resignations. There are 4 of them. Can we do it in a
So I'll
block
make it
or?
very quick. There's a letter of resignation for someone who's moving on to the role. The retirement letters, the one thing I just want you to be aware of, these are all 3 people who qualify because they were hired prior to 1996. They have a distribution of their sick time paid out over multiple years, 1 to 3 years. Each of these people have notified us in some form about when they're going to go. The past practice of the district was to hold on to those letters until close to the date that they were going to actually leave the district. For the sake of transparency to the board and for the sake of kind of more clear planning for people, we are now bringing those to you as soon as we get them. So just a heads up, that's a different practice than what we've done in the past, but yes, I think you could accept these as a block.
Motion to
Okay.
accept the 4 correspondence.
Second.
Do you need a vote on this one?
We don't know, there's no action, it's
Okay.
just information.
Take
All
it
right,
back.
never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're going to the consideration approval of leave of absences. Do you want to go ahead, Mr. Hedges and Ms. Finney?
So you have two requests for leave of absences. One from Jen Hedges, who's a 3rd grade teacher at Dondero. The other is from Ben Finney, who is currently on is in the midst of year 1 of a leave and is requesting extension of a leave. We're in support of both of these leaves, both of these requests.
Motion to approve, or do we already have a motion?
Yeah, we have to have a motion on that one.
Motion to approve.
No, do we have to have a motion on that?
Yes.
Question, no.
Yes.
I think we need to make Ben Finney come back for the sake of my child.
That's true.
Giving Ben the opportunity to have a second year of leave is our best opportunity to have Ben return.
I disagree. We had anticipated that one. On the leave for Hedges, it just doesn't have a time frame, and I know that in the past we have had some very strange timeframes, and I just wanted to know if you had more details.
This is a one-year
One-year
request.
leave of absence.
Yeah. If
Okay.
there was a decision to extend that, we'd come back with similar to Ben, and we'd come back with a second request.
Any more discussion? Patty?
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Brian?
Byron
Yes.
Matto. Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
And Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport. 7-0.
All right. So we'll move on to the consideration of two gifts very quickly. As if you recall, policies KCD, the way this works, it's tiered. So the superintendent of schools can accept gifts up to $1,000 or less. The board can accept gifts over $1,000. If the gift is between $1,001 and $20,000, it must be put on the agenda. If it is over $20,000, the board must conduct a public hearing in order to accept the gift. Both of these gifts are in the ones for $2,000. That is going from a family who's had a very good experience with PEEP, and they want to make the donation to PEEP for PEEP to use as they see appropriate. And the other is from the Knights of Columbus for $4,106, connected with the Tootsie Roll Fund, and so the board. These are both on the agenda per KCD, and the board would need to vote to accept the gifts.
I'll just quote my 4-year-old, I love Peep School, and motion to approve the gift.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? Thank those two organizations for us.
We will make sure we send out thank yous to both groups.
Okay. Roll call.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Passes.
I think we're done.
We could reopen
Could
public
we open
comment.
public comments?
Oh. Did we get to 30 minutes? Oh, we didn't, okay. Okay, we will reopen the public comment section. If anybody would like to come up, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address.
Lauren Cook, 86 Coakley. How are you not all freezing? It's freezing.
I know it's cold in here.
First of all, I just want to say you both look really, beaten down and stressed with this process, and so I do want to acknowledge that I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, and so as much as it's emotional for me, I feel for you.
Can you state your name and address, please?
I did.
Oh, she did. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Second, I do want to point out that in that January 2nd meeting that I then watched after the fact, there was talk about sending letters to families to notify them of those neighborhoods being included. I don't know what happened to that, but I just, I appreciate people bringing up these concerns about communication. So I think that's really important, whatever form it comes to, and that I support that. Third, I really appreciate you bringing up these other new neighborhoods that are coming into play. I get that they're not going to decrease numbers, but they're still going to have a few students trickle in that are adding to numbers that are switching these proportions from schools. So then, of course, I'm going to end with, got to pull for my neighborhood, right? I heard people hear what I said initially. I heard you say, yep, we probably could do with it or without it, so please do without it. Like, I don't feel like it's too late to change it. I feel like there's other ways to get your couple of students that are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim James, 1600 Islington Street. First, thank you for your continued support with the process of grandfathering younger siblings. I think it's vital to this process for all families. To clarify, there's one family in Cuts Cove that does have students in New Franklin School. Carrie, I want to clear something up because it seemed overcrowding at New Franklin next year is a huge worry and a motivating factor. The data doesn't show that there will be a need for more than 2 classes, even if 10 new students move to New Franklin neighborhoods. According to your data collected, 10 extra or unexpected K enrollments at New Franklin equals 17.5 students divided into 2 classes. Also, New Franklin's 3rd grade could easily be put into 2 classes instead of 3. So when you're thinking about the classes and the amount of space provided, I don't think that will be an issue in the immediate future. In regards to Pip's comment on considering other neighborhoods in general,
When you look at neighborhoods like Oxford and Panaway, which abut a new development which will be at the Lister Academy, you don't have a long grandfather timeline. Your worries of clarity as time passes is not necessary. This makes planning easier for administration, and the uncertainties you discuss are a non-issue due to the current ages of kids in Panaway and in Oxford. To my knowledge, there is only one family in these two neighborhoods that would qualify for grandfathering in. Most of the families there, their youngest or only child is in kindergarten or first grade. All the information being relayed seems that it needs more time to be assessed and thought out. I feel uncomfortable sitting watching and knowing that decisions are going to be made when it appears the process of data collection and analysis has only just begun. You say the plan won't change over time, yet every time you've met, the plan changes. Even tonight, you propose a transition year. Don't make a decision just to make a decision, and I know you're burnt out, but don't make a decision just because you are tired of the process. Make a decision because it's the right one. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, can you change that? Thanks.
Julie Gallett, 10 Fletcher Street. So I do I know I sent an email in. I do kind of have to speak publicly now about this whole like Panaway Oxford thing. I know you've said in the past there's no new developments in the New Franklin. They're all single family homes. And now we have this one development. It's a new development. I know you've moved and we know the research from the previous old developments, new developments, stuff like that. But this new development is very different than all the other developments that have come into Portsmouth. This is workforce housing. We do not know like what this is going to look like. But I do think that like that should maybe be discussed a little bit more. I know, you know, the discussion that's going to be had at the next meeting is this the right move? And I just request that you do consider this as another option and just like really make sure this is the right option. Something that I do think is really important to maybe consider if there's a way to do it, just because it feels a little more informal, is if at the next redistricting committee, if there is a way for board members to be present, to be able to have the conversation, kind of hear how things flow, versus like maybe being on this platform. I don't know if that's possible for that to occur. To be able to hear from the principals. I want to say thank you for listening and having the principals. I know not everybody agrees with it, but I do think it's really important to hear from them because they are the ones at the end of the day that are going to be impacted by this year after year. And it's also really interesting, like one of the biggest things I'm thinking about is hearing that 57 students are going to be leaving New Franklin. It kind of makes me think, and it would be really interesting to hear from the principal, what does that look like over the years and what do the numbers look like? What would the projected numbers be for classroom sizes? Just because they do wiggle a lot between like 2 and 3 classrooms. And like you said, you're not an administrator, and I think Joanne would be able to speak much more better to that. I think that's it. But thanks for the discussion tonight and going later. Really appreciate being able to speak at public comment again, and for everyone who's been listening to our emails. Truly, 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 Carrie and Byron, you guys are great. I know this is really challenging. I'm so happy your son is really happy at PEEP. Go PEEP.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Who motioned? Carrie? Carrie. Do we need a roll call for that?
No.
No? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone.